Hey story enthusiasts! This is Dark Harry bringing you another gem. In this video, we present to you what if Harry refused to return to Hogwarts and chose the Addams family forever. Dumbledore begged him, if you enjoy these stories as much as we enjoy sharing them, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Let's dive in. Chapter 1. The boy who left Uncle Vernon's face had turned that particular shade of purple that Harry had come to recognize as the precursor to an explosion. His mustache twitched violently as he crushed the newspaper in his meaty fist. Absolutely outrageous, he bellowed, causing the windows of number 4, Privet Drive to rattle. Petunia. They've moved the conference. To America of all places. Harry, who had been quietly eating the smallest portion of breakfast at the kitchen table, tried to make himself invisible. This was a skill he'd been perfecting long before he discovered he was a wizard. Unfortunately, Uncle Vernon's beady eyes locked onto him anyway. "Boy! This is your fault somehow." "Vernon," Aunt Petunia hissed, "how could the boy possibly affect your drill conference?" Vernon huffed. "I don't know how, but his abnormality has a way of making things difficult. Mark my words." Harry suppressed an eye roll. He'd been back from his first year at Hogwarts for only 2 weeks, and already the summer stretched before him like an endless desert. Dudley, who had been shoveling bacon into his mouth, finally looked up. "Does this mean we're not going to Majorca?" he whined. "No, Diddykins," Petunia stroked her son's hair. "We'll have to go to America instead. Vernon can't miss this conference, it's his chance for the promotion." Dudley's face scrunched up. "But I wanted to go to the beach." "America has beaches, Dudley," Harry muttered without thinking. "Nobody asked you." Vernon snapped. Then his eyes narrowed dangerously. "Although, this presents a problem. What to do with him?" He jerked his thumb at Harry like he was discussing a particularly troublesome piece of furniture. "Mrs. Figg," suggested Petunia. "In hospital. Broke her leg tripping over one of those blasted cats." "My sister Marge." Vernon shook his head. "She's judging bulldogs in Yorkshire that week." Harry's heart lifted slightly. Maybe he'd get to stay home alone. Or better yet, maybe they'd let him go to the Weasleys for the rest of the summer. "We could." Vernon's eyes glinted with malice, "take him with us." Harry's spoon clattered to the table. "What?" "Yes," Vernon nodded, warming to his idea. "Keep him where we can see him. Make sure he doesn't do any, you know what." He wiggled his fingers to indicate magic. "But Daddy, I don't want the freak to come." Dudley wailed. Now, Dudders," Vernon said soothingly. "Think of it this way, he can carry your bags." And that was how, 3 days later, Harry found himself crammed into the back seat of a rental car somewhere in rural New Jersey, squashed between Dudley and a tower of luggage with his knees practically touching his chin. How much longer? Dudley whined for the 17th time in an hour. "The hotel should be just past these woods, Sweetums," Aunt Petunia replied, squinting at a paper map. Harry pressed his forehead against the window, watching the dense trees blur past. The forests here seemed darker, older somehow than the ones back home. Rain had started to fall, heavy drops that quickly became a downpour, drumming on the roof of the car. "Blasted American weather," Vernon muttered, leaning forward to peer through the windshield. The wipers flapped frantically, barely keeping up with the deluge. A crack of thunder shook the air, and the car sputtered. No. Vernon slapped the dashboard as the vehicle coughed, jerked, and rolled to a dead stop. "What's happening, Vernon?" Petunia's voice rose an octave. "How should I know? Bloody rental car." Vernon twisted the key viciously, but the engine only made a sad whining noise before falling silent. Harry spotted something through the rain-streaked window, a glimmer of light up ahead. "There's a house there," he said, pointing. Vernon squinted through the downpour. "Where?" "I don't see, oh." Rising from the gloom like something from a nightmare stood a massive Victorian mansion. Its black silhouette was etched against the stormy sky, illuminated briefly by lightning. Turrets and towers stretched upward, and the windows glowed with faint, yellowish light. "We are not going there," Petunia declared instantly. "Don't be ridiculous, pet. It's pouring rain, the car's dead, and it's the only building for miles." "It looks haunted," Dudley whispered, his face pale. For once, Harry agreed with his cousin. There was something off about the place. But unlike Dudley, Harry felt an odd pull toward the strange house. With much grumbling, the Dursleys exited the car. Vernon popped the trunk to retrieve an umbrella, which he immediately shared with Petunia and Dudley, leaving Harry to get soaked. They slogged through mud toward wrought iron gates that looked like they hadn't been opened in a century. To everyone's surprise, they swung inward at Vernon's touch with a long, theatrical creak. "Needs oil," Vernon muttered, trying to sound normal. They trudged up the winding path. The front lawn, if you could call it that, was a tangle of strange plants and what looked suspiciously like gravestones. A gnarled tree with no leaves despite the summer season loomed over them, its branches reaching down like fingers. By the time they reached the massive front door, Harry was drenched to the skin, his glasses foggy with rain. Vernon raised a fist and pounded on the door. The sound echoed like a funeral drum. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, with the same spine-chilling creak as the gate, the door swung open. The man who stood there was tall and corpse-thin, with sunken eyes and skin the color of old parchment. He stared down at them without blinking. "You rang?" His voice was a dry whisper. "Car broke down," Vernon barked, trying to sound authoritative despite his obvious discomfort. "Need to use your telephone." The man's gaze slid over them, pausing briefly on Harry. Something flickered in those dead eyes, recognition. Interest. Then it was gone. "Enter," he stepped back with mechanical precision. "The family will be pleased to have guests." The Dursleys huddled together as they stepped into a cavernous entryway lit by candelabras. The ceiling soared above them, lost in shadows. Suits of armor lined the walls, and various weapons, swords, maces, and what looked like torture devices, hung as decoration. "I am Lurch," the cadaverous man informed them. "The Addams family butler." "Well, I'm Vernon Dursley, this is my wife Petunia, my son Dudley, and the boy." Vernon didn't even gesture toward Harry. "Just need to make a quick call for a tow truck, and we'll be on our way." "The telephone," Lurch intoned, "is this way." He turned and began walking with the stiff gait of a man with rigor mortis. As they followed, something small and hairy scuttled across their path. Aunt Petunia shrieked and leapt backward. "Was that a hand?" Harry blurted out. "Thing," Lurch explained without turning around. "The family assistant." Before anyone could process this, a voice boomed from above them. "Visitors. How delightful." A man with slicked back hair and a pencil mustache slid down the banister of the grand staircase, landing with a flourish directly in front of them. He wore a pinstriped suit that might have been fashionable in the 1930s and grinned with the enthusiasm of a game show host. "Gomez Addams, at your service." He seized Vernon's hand and pumped it vigorously. "Welcome to our humble abode." Yes, thank you," Vernon extracted his hand with difficulty. "Just need to use your phone. Our car broke down in the storm." A classic dark and stormy night scenario. "Marvelous." Gomez clapped his hands. "You must all stay for dinner." "Lurch, inform my wife we have guests." Lurch made a groaning sound that might have been acknowledgement and shuffled away. "Oh, we couldn't possibly," Petunia began. "Nonsense. We insist. It's been ages since we've had visitors, for dinner." Harry couldn't help but notice the slip. The Dursleys paled collectively. A woman glided into the room, and Harry had to blink twice to make sure he wasn't seeing things. She was tall and slender, dressed in a form-fitting black dress that pooled around her feet like spilled ink. Her skin was so pale it seemed to glow in the dim light, and her hair fell in a straight black curtain to her waist. But it was her eyes that caught Harry's attention, dark, intense, and somehow ancient. "Cara mia!" Gomez exclaimed, practically leaping to her side. "Our guests have arrived." "So Lurch informed me." Her voice was smooth as velvet. "I am Morticia Addams. Welcome to our home." Harry felt a strange sense of calm in her presence. Despite her eerie appearance, there was something genuine about her. She looked at each of them in turn, her gaze lingering on Harry. "Your aura," she murmured. "How fascinating. So much power for one so young." Harry's eyes widened. Could she tell he was a wizard? "Tish. You spoke French." Gomez suddenly grabbed her arm and began kissing his way up it. "You know what that does to me." Later, mon cher, Morticia gently extracted herself, though her red lips curved in a small smile. "Our guests are tired and wet. Especially this young man." She gestured to Harry. Vernon cleared his throat loudly. "About that telephone, all in good time," Gomez waved dismissively. "First, you must meet the rest of the family." As if on cue, a bald man with wild eyes and a manic grin bounded into the room. Bulbs in the nearest lamp flickered and popped as he passed. "Did I hear we have company?" He rubbed his hands together, generating visible sparks. "Indeed. Uncle Fester, meet the, sorry, didn't catch the name." Gomez turned to Vernon. "Dursley," Vernon muttered, staring at Fester's sparking fingers. "The Dursleys." "And?" Gomez looked at Harry. "Harry," he supplied. "Harry Potter." A strange silence fell. Harry got the distinct impression that his name meant something to these people. "Potter," Morticia repeated softly. "How interesting." Before Harry could ask what she meant, two children appeared at the top of the stairs. One was a pudgy boy with a cherubic face and a striped shirt. The other was a girl about Harry's age with long black braids, a black dress with a white collar, and an expression that made Professor Snape look cheerful. "Children. Come meet our guests," Gomez called. They descended the stairs, the girl moving with the same gliding grace as her mother, the boy clomping down with heavy steps. "This is Wednesday, our daughter, and Pugsley, our son," Morticia introduced them. Wednesday's dark eyes fixed on Harry with unsettling intensity. "You have death clinging to you," she stated flatly. Aunt Petunia made a strangled noise. "I really think we should go." "Nonsense." Gomez boomed. "The storm is getting worse. You must stay the night." As if to emphasize his point, thunder crashed so loudly the chandeliers shook. "Stay, the night?" Dudley whimpered. "We have plenty of room," Morticia assured them. "Some of the ghosts might have to double up, but they rarely complain." Harry couldn't tell if she was joking. "Now, about that phone call," Vernon tried again. "Ah yes. The telephone." Gomez snapped his fingers. "Fester, show the man to the phone." "This way." Fester grabbed Vernon's arm with alarming strength and dragged him down a corridor. "Perhaps we can find some dry clothes for young Harry," Morticia suggested. "Pugsley, would you mind sharing?" Pugsley shrugged. "As long as he doesn't mind the blood stains. Most of it washed out." "Blood?" Harry repeated. "From the ritual sacrifices," Wednesday explained, her face completely serious. "Nothing human. Recently." The Dursleys huddled closer together, eyes darting around as if looking for escape routes. Harry, however, felt a bizarre sense of comfort. After facing Voldemort at the end of the school year, a family with a morbid sense of humor didn't seem so scary. When Vernon returned from making his call, his face was ashen. "The tow truck can't make it until morning," he informed them grimly. The roads flooded. Splendid. Gomez clapped him on the back hard enough to make Vernon stagger. Then you'll all stay for dinner and breakfast. And that was how Harry found himself, an hour later, seated at a long dining table that could have come straight from a medieval castle. The wood was black with age, the chairs high-backed and uncomfortable. Candles provided the only illumination, their flames casting long shadows across the walls where various mounted animal heads watched with glassy eyes. The food was unusual. Harry couldn't identify half of what was on his plate, but it tasted better than it looked, spicy and rich. The Dursleys picked at their portions suspiciously, while Harry, who had been half-starved at Privet Drive, ate with cautious enthusiasm. "So, young Harry," Gomez said between bites, "tell us about yourself." Before Harry could answer, Uncle Vernon cut in. "There's nothing to tell. Boy goes to St. Brutus's secure center for incurably criminal boys." Morticia's eyebrow rose elegantly. "Does he now?" "He has a lightning scar on his forehead," Wednesday observed. "I saw it when his hair moved." Harry instinctively flattened his fringe over the scar. "How did you get it?" she asked, the first hint of interest coloring her monotone voice. "Car crash," Vernon answered quickly. "That's how his parents died. Drunk driving." Harry's grip tightened on his fork. The familiar lie tasted bitter. "Curious," Morticia murmured. "It doesn't look like an ordinary scar." "Nothing ordinary about it," came a croaking voice from the end of the table. Harry hadn't noticed the old woman until she spoke. With wild grey hair and a face like a shriveled apple, she reminded him vaguely of the witches in Dudley's storybooks. "Ah! I forgot to introduce Grandmama," Gomez exclaimed. "My mother, the family witch." Petunia choked on her water. "Did you say, witch?" Harry asked carefully. "Best potion maker this side of the Atlantic," Gomez declared proudly. "Makes a love potion that'll have you sprouting extra limbs within hours." "There's no such thing as witches," Dudley said, though he didn't sound convinced. Grandmama cackled. "Tell that to the toad that used to be my second husband." "This is preposterous," Vernon sputtered. "We don't believe in any of this supernatural nonsense." "How limiting," Morticia commented. "Especially," Wednesday added, staring directly at Harry, "when there's clearly a wizard at the table." The room went silent. Harry froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. "Don't be ridiculous." Vernon's voice was too loud, too frantic. "There's no such thing as wizards." Morticia shared a look with her husband. "Mr. Dursley, please don't insult our intelligence. We Addamses have been connected to the magical world for generations. Though we practice a different sort of magic than those wand wavers," Gomez added cheerfully. Harry's mind raced. These people knew about magic? About wizards? "You know about Hogwarts?" He blurted out. "Harry!" Uncle Vernon thundered. "The British Wizarding School, yes," Morticia nodded. "Though the Addams family has always preferred alternative magical education. Too restrictive, those wizarding schools," Gomez shook his head. "All those rules about what magic is acceptable. Where's the fun in that?" Harry couldn't believe what he was hearing. An entire family that not only knew about magic but seemed to embrace it wholeheartedly. "You're lying," Aunt Petunia hissed. "You're trying to encourage his freakishness." Wednesday's dark eyes narrowed. "Freakishness? His abnormality." Vernon's face was turning purple again. "We've tried for years to stamp it out of him." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. The candle flames dimmed, casting the Addams family's faces into sinister shadow. "Stamp it out." Morticia's voice was soft but filled with something dangerous. "You mean suppress his magic? His birthright?" "Magic is the highest form of art," Grandmama rasped. "To suppress it is a crime against nature itself." "Nature?" Vernon scoffed. There's nothing natural about what those freaks do. Harry saw Gomez's smile fade for the first time. Mr. Dursley, he said, his voice suddenly cold, in the Addams family, we celebrate the unusual. The macabre. The extraordinary. What we do not tolerate is cruelty toward children. Uncle Fester, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Did they hurt you, kid? All eyes turned to Harry. The Dursleys looked panicked. They. Harry hesitated, never having been asked so directly before. They keep me in a cupboard under the stairs. Or they did, until my Hogwarts letters came. Letters addressed to the cupboard under the stairs, Morticia stated rather than asked, her dark eyes flashing. Harry nodded. They don't feed me much. Make me do all the chores. Call me freak instead of my name. With each word, the Addams family's expressions grew darker. Even Wednesday looked outraged, in her deadpan way. Boy, that's enough. Vernon stood up abruptly. We're leaving. Car or no car, we're not staying in this madhouse. Sit down, Mr. Dursley. Gomez's voice was quiet but carried an unmistakable threat. To Harry's amazement, Uncle Vernon sat. Let me make something perfectly clear, Gomez continued, leaning forward. No child deserves to be treated as you've treated Harry. Wizard or not. What we do with the boy is our business, Vernon tried to bluster. Not anymore, Morticia stated simply. Harry felt a strange tightness in his chest, hope mingled with fear. Was this really happening? Harry, Morticia turned to him, her voice gentler. Would you prefer to stay here tonight? Away from your relatives? The offer hung in the air like a lifeline. Harry glanced at the Dursleys, who looked horrified, then back at the strange family who had defended him after knowing him for mere hours. Yes, he said firmly. I would. Excellent. The usual good humor returned to Gomez's voice. Lurch will show the rest of you to the guest rooms in the East Wing. Harry can stay in the room adjoining Pugsley's. You can't just keep our nephew. Petunia protested. Keep? Morticia raised an eyebrow. We're merely offering him comfortable accommodation for the night. Unless, of course, he wishes to stay longer. The pointed look she gave Harry made it clear this was a genuine offer. Vernon looked like he wanted to argue further, but something about the collection of carving knives hanging on the wall behind Gomez seemed to dissuade him. Fine, he growled. The boy can stay down here with you people. We'll sort this out in the morning. After the Dursleys had been led away by Lurch, Harry found himself surrounded by the Addams family in their massive living room. The storm continued to rage outside, but the crackling fire and the strange but genuine warmth of the family made it seem distant. So, Harry Potter, Gomez puffed on a cigar that smelled of exotic spices. The boy who lived, here in our humble home. Harry blinked. You know who I am. Of course, dear, Morticia settled gracefully into a chair that looked suspiciously like an electric one. Your story reached even our circles. A baby surviving the killing curse. Most impressive. I bet it hurt, Wednesday said, looking envious. I don't really remember it, Harry admitted. Just a green light and sometimes, a high laugh. Pugsley's eyes widened. Cool. What I don't understand, Harry continued, is how you know about magic if you don't go to wizarding schools. Are you wizards too? Gomez laughed heartily. Not in the way you mean, my boy. The Addamses practiced the old magic. Blood magic. Death magic. The kind your ministry probably has labeled as dark. We don't use wands, Wednesday explained, producing a small dagger from somewhere in her dress. We use intention, blood, and sacrifice. Sacrifice? Harry echoed nervously. Nothing too dramatic, Morticia assured him. A drop of blood here, a lock of hair there. The occasional chicken. Though Uncle Fester does enjoy the more explosive aspects of magic, Gomez winked. Fester grinned, electrical current visibly running through his body and making the nearby light bulb glow brighter. "And you don't think magic is freakish?" Harry asked tentatively. The family looked genuinely shocked. "Magic is beautiful," Morticia said softly. "Terrible and beautiful. It's in our blood," Gomez added. "As it is in yours, Harry." For the first time in his life, Harry felt truly seen. Not as the boy who lived. Not as a freak. Just as Harry, a young wizard. "Would you like to see some real magic?" Wednesday asked suddenly. "I've seen magic at Hogwarts," Harry pointed out. She rolled her eyes. "Not that tame stuff with wands and Latin words. Real magic." Before Harry could answer, she pricked her finger with her dagger and squeezed a drop of blood onto the carpet. She whispered something in a language Harry didn't recognize, and the drop of blood expanded, forming a small, crimson butterfly that fluttered around the room before dissolving into mist. Harry's jaw dropped. That was wandless magic. We're told that's incredibly difficult. Only if you're taught to depend on a wand, Grandmama croaked. Magic comes from within, not from a stick. The conversation continued late into the night. The Addamses asked about Hogwarts, laughing at the house divisions, sorting children by personality. How limiting, and the restricted curriculum, they don't teach blood rituals until Newt level. Scandalous. In turn, Harry learned about the Addams family's unique history. They were, as Gomez proudly declared, the descendants of every evil witch, warlock, and murderess throughout history. Yet despite their macabre interests and unusual magic, Harry couldn't detect any actual malice in them. They seemed to genuinely care for each other, and strangely, for him as well. When Harry finally retired to his room, a Gothic chamber complete with a four-poster bed draped in black velvet, he felt more at home than he ever had at Privet Drive. As he drifted off to sleep, he wondered what Hogwarts would say if they knew he was staying with a family of dark wizards who didn't even use wands. Morning arrived with weak sunlight filtering through stained glass windows, casting multicolored patterns across Harry's bed. For a moment, he thought he was back at Hogwarts. Then he remembered, the Addams family. The strange mansion. Magic without wands. He dressed quickly in clothes Pugsley had lent him, slightly too large, but clean and comfortable, and made his way downstairs. He could hear raised voices from the dining room. "Absolutely insist we leave immediately," Vernon was saying as Harry entered. The Dursleys were gathered at one end of the long table, looking like they hadn't slept well. Opposite them sat Gomez and Morticia, calmly sipping from steaming cups. "The tow truck should arrive shortly," Gomez replied amiably. "No reason we can't enjoy breakfast while we wait." Harry slipped into a seat beside Wednesday, who was dissecting a sausage with scientific precision. "Did you sleep well?" Morticia asked him. "Best sleep I've had all summer," Harry answered honestly. "Nightmares?" she inquired. Harry nodded, surprised. "How did you know?" "The house told me. It's sensitive to such things." Before Harry could ask what she meant by that, Uncle Vernon interrupted. "Boy! Get your things. We're leaving as soon as that truck arrives." The thought of returning to Privet Drive made Harry's stomach clench. 2 more months of chores, isolation, and being called freak. Then back to Hogwarts, where everyone expected him to be the hero. What if? Harry began, then faltered. "Yes, dear." Morticia prompted. "What if I didn't go back with them?" The words rushed out before he could reconsider. "What if I stayed here? Just for the summer?" The silence that followed was deafening. "Absolutely not." Vernon roared, recovering first. "You'll do as you're told, boy." "Harry," Morticia's calm voice cut through Vernon's bluster, "are you asking to stay with us?" Harry nodded, his heart pounding. "If you'll have me." "Have you?" "My boy, we'd be delighted." Gomez exclaimed, leaping to his feet. An apprentice wizard in the house. Just like old times, Tish. Indeed, Morticia smiled at Harry, a genuine, warm expression that transformed her ghostly face. You would be most welcome. This is outrageous. Petunia shrieked. He's our responsibility. A responsibility you've clearly neglected, Grandmama observed, shuffling into the room with a pot of something bubbling and green. You can't just take someone else's child. Vernon slammed his fist on the table. Actually, Gomez pulled out a monocle and peered through it at Vernon. In both magical and mundane law, there are provisions for exactly that in cases of mistreatment. We haven't, Vernon began. Cupboard under the stairs, Wednesday reminded him flatly. Harry watched the exchange with growing hope. Could this actually happen? Could he really escape the Dursleys? There are protections, Petunia said suddenly, her voice low. That man, Dumbledore, he said there were blood protections because I'm his mother's sister. That's why he has to stay with us. Harry's heart sank. She was right, Dumbledore had been insistent about the blood protections. But to his surprise, Morticia and Gomez exchanged knowing looks. Blood protections are powerful, Morticia acknowledged. But they require more than mere relation, Mrs. Dursley. They require a bond. Love, even in its most basic form. The boy's still alive, isn't he? Vernon growled. Physical survival isn't the only measure of protection, Gomez said, suddenly serious. What about his spirit? His magic? His sense of self-worth? Besides, Grandmama cackled, I know a thing or two about blood wards. Could set some up here that would make Dumbledore's look like a picket fence. Harry looked at the old witch with newfound hope. Really? Blood of the witch, freely given, she recited, is stronger than blood of the horse-faced sister who never wanted you in the first place. How dare you? Petunia gasped. She has a point about your face, Wednesday commented. A loud honking from outside interrupted the brewing argument. That'll be the tow truck, Gomez announced. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Dursley, it seems decision time has arrived. Vernon stood, his face mottled with rage. The boy comes with us. End of discussion. And if I refuse? Harry challenged, finding courage he didn't know he had. What will you do? Lock me in my room again? Starve me? The Addamses' expressions darkened at this. You'll do as you're bloody told. Vernon took a threatening step toward Harry. In an instant, Lurch appeared behind Vernon, his massive hand descending onto the man's shoulder with enough pressure to make Vernon wince. Mr. Dursley, Morticia's voice was silk over steel, I don't believe you understand the situation. We are not asking your permission. We are informing you of Harry's choice. And our support of it, Gomez added cheerfully, though his eyes remained hard. Now, shall we discuss this like civilized people, or shall we involve the authorities? I'm sure the magical law enforcement would be fascinated to learn how the famous Harry Potter has been treated. The threat hung in the air. Vernon's face cycled through several colors before settling on a defeated gray. Fine, he spat finally. Keep the freak. One less mouth to feed. Vernon. Petunia looked horrified. What about the you-know-what? The protections? I don't care anymore, Petunia. Let them deal with his abnormality. Dudley, who had been silent throughout, looked between his parents and Harry with confusion. So Harry's not coming back home? Ever? This is my home now, Dudley, Harry said, the reality of it finally sinking in. Or at least, it will be. For the summer. Something flickered across Dudley's face, was it regret? But it was gone before Harry could identify it. His things? Morticia inquired. In the trunk of the car, Vernon grunted. Along with that blasted owl. Hedwig. Harry had almost forgotten about his owl. Lurch will retrieve Harry's belongings, Gomez declared. And with that, I believe our business is concluded. The departure of the Dursleys was anticlimactic. Vernon refused to shake hands or say goodbye, simply storming out to the waiting tow truck. Petunia gave Harry one last, unreadable look before following her husband. Only Dudley hesitated. "See you around, I guess," he mumbled. "Yeah," Harry replied, surprised at the small pang he felt. For all their differences, Dudley was still the only cousin he'd ever known. As the car disappeared down the drive, Harry stood on the porch of the Addams mansion, surrounded by his new, temporary family. "Well," Gomez clapped him on the shoulder, "welcome home, my boy." Home. Harry let the word sink in. He had a home now, a real one, with people who accepted his magic. Who celebrated it, even. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "All of you." "Don't thank us yet," Wednesday warned. "You haven't tried Grandmama's breakfast potions." And for the first time in what felt like forever, Harry laughed, a genuine, free sound that echoed through the halls of his new home. The weeks that followed were the strangest, most wonderful of Harry's life. The Addams family embraced him completely, integrating him into their bizarre routines and teaching him their unique form of magic. Grandmama took him under her wing first, showing him how to brew potions without the rigid formulas of Hogwarts. "Feeling, boy. It's all about feeling," she cackled as she tossed ingredients into her cauldron with reckless abandon. "The intention matters more than the measurement." To Harry's amazement, her potions were more potent than anything he'd seen in Snape's class. When he mentioned this, she snorted. "Severus Snape? That uptight bat? I taught him a thing or two when he was younger, though he'd never admit it now." "You knew Professor Snape?" Harry asked, shocked. "Came seeking the darker arts, as they all do eventually," she winked. "Too rigid in his thinking, though. Brilliant, but bound by rules." From Uncle Fester, Harry learned about the more explosive aspects of magic, how to channel energy through his body without a wand, creating small electrical charges that made his fingertips tingle. "The key is to embrace the pain," Fester demonstrated by sticking a fork in a wall socket and lighting up like a Christmas tree. Harry opted for more moderate methods. Pugsley taught him about magical creatures, though his knowledge centered primarily on how different parts could be used in explosives. But it was Wednesday who became Harry's closest companion and most demanding teacher. Despite being the same age, she possessed knowledge of dark magic that would have made the restricted section at Hogwarts seem tame by comparison. "Your so-called defense against the dark arts is absurd," she informed him as they practiced in the family graveyard. "You can't truly defend against dark magic until you understand it." She taught him wandless spells, simple at first, like levitating small objects with only his intention and a gesture. Then more complex ones, how to sense magical auras, how to manipulate shadows, how to speak to the dead, though the conversations were disappointingly one-sided, consisting mostly of moans and vague warnings. "Your wand limits you," she explained. "It's a crutch. Real magic comes from within." Harry found, to his surprise, that she was right. Without the restrictions he'd been taught at Hogwarts, his magic flowed more naturally, responding to his emotions and intentions rather than rigid movements and incantations. Morticia and Gomez oversaw his education more broadly, filling in the gaps in his magical knowledge that Hogwarts had left. "The history they teach you is sanitized," Morticia explained one evening as they sat in the library, surrounded by ancient tomes. "Magic has always been both light and dark, often simultaneously. The Ministry would have you believe that dark means evil," Gomez added, practicing fencing moves against an animated suit of armor. "But magic itself is neutral, it's the intention that matters." "Then why are some spells classified as unforgivable?" Harry asked, thinking of Voldemort. "Politics, mostly," Gomez replied, disarming the armor with a flourish. "The winners write the rules." "Though some magic truly is corrupting," Morticia cautioned. "Magic that requires unwilling sacrifice, that feeds on pain and fear, such magic takes a toll on the caster's soul." Like what Voldemort does? Harry asked quietly. The Addamses didn't flinch at the name, which was refreshing after the Wizarding World's reaction. Exactly, Morticia nodded. The darkest magic of all is that which denies death its due. Which is why what happened to you is so remarkable, Harry. What do you mean? Your survival wasn't just about your mother's protection, Gomez explained, sitting down beside them. It was about Voldemort's fear of death. His unwillingness to accept the natural order. The Addams family has always embraced death, Morticia said softly. We do not fear it, though we may not rush to meet it. That acceptance gives our magic balance. These philosophical discussions were new to Harry, who had always been told magic was simply a tool, neither good nor bad. But the Addamses' perspective made a strange kind of sense. As the weeks passed, Harry found himself growing stronger both magically and emotionally. Without the constant belittlement of the Dursleys or the pressure of being the boy who lived, he flourished. He wrote to Ron and Hermione, explaining his strange new living arrangement without going into too much detail about the Addamses' magical practices. Their responses were a mix of concern and curiosity. Mum's worried, Ron wrote. Says we don't know anything about these people. Dad's checking if they're registered with the American Magical Government. Are you safe? Hermione's letter demanded. I've never heard of wandless magic being taught to underage wizards. It sounds potentially dangerous, Harry. Harry assured them he was fine, better than fine, actually. He was happy. As July turned to August, however, reality began to intrude. An official-looking owl arrived one morning at breakfast, bearing a letter with the Hogwarts seal. Your school has found you, Morticia observed as Harry opened the envelope. Inside was not just his supply list for second year, but a personal note from Dumbledore, requesting a meeting. He wants to visit, Harry said, his stomach clenching. Tomorrow afternoon. Albus Dumbledore, in our humble abode. Gomez exclaimed. What an honor. He'll want me to leave, Harry said quietly. To go back to the Dursleys, or at least back to Hogwarts early. The Addamses exchanged looks. What do you want, Harry? Morticia asked gently. Harry looked around at the family that had taken him in, taught him, accepted him completely. The answer came easily. I want to stay here, he said firmly. At least until school starts. And, maybe come back next summer. Of course. Gomez beamed. Your family now, Harry. An honorary Addams. Then it's settled, Morticia nodded. We shall inform the headmaster of your decision. Harry felt a rush of gratitude, but also apprehension. Dumbledore wasn't used to being refused. Tomorrow's meeting would be interesting. We should prepare, Wednesday said, her dark eyes gleaming. If Dumbledore is as powerful as they say, he might not accept Harry's choice easily. Now, Wednesday, Gomez chided, we mustn't jump to cursing the headmaster of Hogwarts. Not without provocation, at least. Perhaps, Grandmama suggested with a wicked grin, a special tea for our distinguished guest. As the Addams family began planning for Dumbledore's visit with alarming enthusiasm, Harry felt a strange mix of emotions. Fear, certainly, he respected Dumbledore enormously. But also defiance. For once in his life, he had found people who accepted him completely, who helped him grow without trying to mold him into something specific. He wouldn't give that up easily, not even for Dumbledore. That night, Harry practiced the meditation techniques Morticia had taught him, preparing for what might be the most important confrontation of his young life. Tomorrow, he would stand his ground. Tomorrow, he would choose his own path. For the first time, Harry Potter would refuse to be the Wizarding World's pawn. The next day dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to Harry's churning emotions. The entire Addams household was in a state of barely contained excitement about their impending visitor. I've prepared my special toadstool tea, Grandmama cackled, stirring a pot that emitted ominous purple smoke. I've polished the Iron Maiden, Lurch groaned, dusting the medieval torture device that stood in the corner of the entrance hall. "And I've told the piranhas to be on their best behavior," Pugsley added proudly. Harry appreciated their enthusiasm but felt it might be misplaced. I don't think we need to impress Dumbledore with torture devices. Or try to poison him," he added, eyeing Grandmama's brew nervously. "Poison? Who said anything about poison?" Grandmama looked offended. "It's just a mild hallucinogen. Makes you see your deepest fears. Perfectly hospitable." "Perhaps we should aim for a more conventional welcome," Morticia suggested gently. "Albus Dumbledore is a powerful wizard. We should show respect. But keep the Iron Maiden ready, just in case," Gomez winked at Harry. At precisely 3 o'clock, the doorbell rang, not the usual funeral dirge, but a cheerful tinkling that seemed out of place in the gloomy mansion. "He's changed our doorbell," Wednesday observed, looking impressed despite herself. "Strong magic." Lurch shuffled to the door and opened it with his customary creak. There stood Albus Dumbledore, resplendent in robes of midnight blue scattered with silver stars. His long white beard was tied with a blue ribbon, and his half-moon spectacles glinted in the afternoon sun. "Good afternoon," he said pleasantly. "I am Albus Dumbledore, headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. I believe I'm expected." Lurch groaned an affirmative and stepped aside. "Welcome to our home, headmaster." Gomez bounded forward, seizing Dumbledore's hand and pumping it enthusiastically. "Gomez Addams, at your service. We've heard so much about you." "All of it impressive," Morticia glided forward. "I am Morticia Addams. We are honored to have such a distinguished wizard visit our humble abode." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled as he bowed over Morticia's outstretched hand. "The honor is mine, Mrs. Addams. Your family's reputation precedes you as well." "Oh." Gomez raised an eyebrow. "Good things, I hope." "Interesting things," Dumbledore replied diplomatically. Then his gaze found Harry, standing slightly behind the Addams family. "Harry, my boy. It's good to see you looking so well." "Professor," Harry nodded, trying to keep his voice steady. "Thank you for coming. I could hardly do otherwise when I received reports that the boy who lived had taken up residence with the most notorious family of dark wizards in North America." There was no accusation in Dumbledore's tone, in fact, he sounded almost amused, but Harry felt defensive nonetheless. "They're not dark wizards," he protested. "Not really. They just practice different magic." "Oh, we're definitely dark wizards," Wednesday contradicted. "We just don't see that as a bad thing." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled even more. "Indeed, Miss Addams. A refreshingly honest perspective. Perhaps we could continue this discussion over tea," Morticia suggested. "In the conservatory, perhaps." "That sounds delightful," Dumbledore agreed. "Lead the way." As they walked through the mansion, Harry noticed Dumbledore observing everything with keen interest, the animated portraits, the strange artifacts, the carnivorous plants that snapped at them as they passed through the conservatory. "Remarkable," he murmured as one particularly vicious-looking bloom tried to take a bite of his beard. "African strangler, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't seen one so well developed since my visit to Madagascar in 1932. "You have a good eye, Professor," Morticia stroked the plant lovingly. "Cleopatra is my pride and joy. The trick is to feed them fresh meat daily." "And the occasional unwanted visitor," Wednesday added with her unnerving half-smile. They settled around a wrought iron table in the center of the conservatory, surrounded by plants that seemed to be watching them with hungry interest. Lurch served tea, normal tea, Harry was relieved to note, not Grandmama's special brew, in delicate cups that appeared to be made from human skulls. "Now then," Dumbledore said after taking a sip, "I believe we have matters to discuss." "Indeed," Gomez agreed. "Harry has something he wishes to tell you." All eyes turned to Harry, who swallowed hard. "Professor," he began, "I want to stay here. With the Addams family. For the rest of the summer, at least. Dumbledore's expression remained neutral. I see. And what has prompted this decision, Harry? They treat me well here, Harry said simply. They accept my magic. They're teaching me things Hogwarts doesn't. And... He hesitated, then plunged ahead, and I feel safe here. Safer than at your aunt and uncle's home? Dumbledore asked quietly. Yes. Harry met the headmaster's eyes. The Dursleys hate magic. They hate me for having it. They've never protected me, they just tolerated me because they had to. I understand your feelings, Harry, but there are protections at Privet Drive that exist nowhere else. Blood protections, Morticia interrupted smoothly. Yes, we're familiar with the concept. But such magic requires a certain, emotional component to work at full strength. A bond of love, Grandmama elaborated, shuffling into the conservatory with her own cup of dubious liquid. Or at least acceptance. The horse-faced woman and her walrus husband provide neither. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose at the description, but he didn't dispute it. Even a reluctant blood connection provides some protection, Mrs. Just Grandmama will do, the old witch cackled. And yes, some protection. But at what cost to the boy's spirit? His magic? You felt it yourself, his power has grown just in these few weeks away from those suppressive muggles. Harry stared at Grandmama, surprised. Could Dumbledore actually sense the difference in his magic? The headmaster sighed, setting down his teacup. I cannot deny that Harry seems different. More confident, certainly. And yes, his magical aura has strengthened. He fixed Harry with a penetrating gaze. But there are greater concerns at play, my boy. Lord Voldemort is a problem regardless of where I live, Harry interrupted. Sir, he added belatedly. We've been discussing Voldemort, Gomez informed Dumbledore cheerfully. Fascinating case study in the corruption of power, don't you think? We've been teaching Harry about the darker aspects of magic, Wednesday added. So he can truly understand what he's up against. Dumbledore's expression sharpened. Teaching him dark magic, you mean? Teaching him about dark magic, Morticia corrected. Knowledge is not inherently evil, headmaster. Surely you of all people understand that. A shadow passed across Dumbledore's face so quickly Harry almost missed it. Indeed, Mrs. Addams. Though some knowledge comes with great risk. Greater risk than facing a Dark Lord with only a first-year's education. Pugsley spoke up for the first time, looking genuinely puzzled. Harry saw Dumbledore's composure slip slightly. You know about Harry's encounter with Voldemort at the end of term? He told us everything, Wednesday confirmed. The Philosopher's Stone. The possession of the teacher. The face on the back of his head. She sounded almost envious of the last detail. Harry faced Voldemort alone, Morticia said quietly. Without adequate preparation or protection. We do not blame you, headmaster, protecting children in a school is complex. But we do question whether traditional education is sufficient for Harry's unique situation. Dumbledore stroked his beard thoughtfully. You make compelling points, Mrs. Addams. Yet I must consider Harry's safety above all. As do we, Gomez insisted. The mansion has protections of its own, older than Hogwarts itself. Blood wards, yes, but also other safeguards against those who would do harm to our family. And Harry is family now. Harry felt a warm glow at Gomez's words. Family. Yes, that's what the Addamses had become to him, in just a few short weeks. And what of Harry's education? Dumbledore inquired. Do you propose to keep him from Hogwarts entirely? No, Harry answered quickly. I still want to go to Hogwarts. I still want to learn wand magic and be with my friends. But... He took a deep breath, I want to come back here for the summers. Instead of going to the Dursleys. Dumbledore studied Harry for a long moment, his blue eyes seeming to peer directly into Harry's soul. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. "You found a home here, haven't you, Harry?" Harry nodded, not trusting himself to speak. "I cannot in good conscience force you to return to an environment where you feel unwelcome and unloved," Dumbledore said finally. "Particularly when there is a viable alternative with adequate protection." Hope surged in Harry's chest. "You mean I can stay?" "For now," Dumbledore cautioned. "I will need to assess the protective enchantments around the mansion. And I would ask for certain concessions from the Addams family regarding Harry's education in, shall we say, the more controversial branches of magic." "Name your terms, headmaster," Gomez declared. "We're reasonable people." "No human sacrifice," Dumbledore stated firmly. "Well, obviously," Wednesday rolled her eyes. "We're not barbarians. No soul magic, no creation of dark artifacts, no summoning of demons or elder gods. That limits our weekend activities considerably," Morticia murmured, "but acceptable for Harry's sake. And I would ask that Harry continue his conventional magical education alongside whatever supplementary knowledge you choose to impart." "Of course," Gomez agreed readily. "Wands have their place in the magical ecosystem." Dumbledore turned back to Harry. "There is one more matter we must address. The blood protection at your aunt's home requires your presence, however brief, to recharge each year." Harry's heart sank. "So I do have to go back." "For a very short time," Dumbledore specified. "Perhaps just a week at the beginning of each summer. The protection must be renewed, Harry, it is too valuable to abandon completely." It wasn't ideal, but compared to spending the entire summer with the Dursleys, a single week seemed manageable. "I can live with that," Harry agreed. "Excellent." Dumbledore clapped his hands together. "Then we have an accord. Harry will remain with the Addams family for the remainder of this summer, return to Hogwarts in September, spend a brief period with the Dursleys next June, and then return here for the bulk of the summer." "A most satisfactory arrangement," Morticia smiled. "And now," Dumbledore rose, his eyes twinkling once more, "I believe I was promised a tour of this fascinating home. I'm particularly interested in the family library. I've heard rumors of a first edition of Magic Most Evil that even the restricted section at Hogwarts lacks." "First edition? Pa!" Grandmama scoffed. "We have the author's personal copy, with his handwritten notes. Follow me, headmaster, and prepare to be educated." As the adults moved off, Harry remained seated, a weight lifted from his shoulders. He had done it, he had stood up to Dumbledore and won the right to stay with his new family. Wednesday lingered behind, studying Harry with her intense gaze. "You're smiling," she observed. "It looks wrong on your face." "Thanks, I think," Harry laughed. Dumbledore gave in too easily, she continued, her eyes narrowing. "He's planning something." "Maybe," Harry conceded. "Or maybe he just wants me to be happy." Wednesday snorted. "Adults always have agendas. Even your parents. Especially my parents. Their agenda just happens to align with my best interests most of the time." Harry considered this. "Well, whatever Dumbledore's planning, I'll deal with it later. Right now, I just want to enjoy the rest of my summer." A disturbingly optimistic attitude, Wednesday sighed. "We'll have to work on that." But the corner of her mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. Together, they followed the sound of Gomez's enthusiastic voice giving Dumbledore the grand tour, complete with historical anecdotes about which ancestor had been beheaded in which room. For the first time in his life, Harry Potter had chosen his own path. And it felt right, darkness, strangeness, and all. Chapter 2, The Headmaster's Plea. Life with the Addams family settled into a bizarre routine that Harry found weirdly comforting. Every morning started with Lurch's organ recital, followed by Grandmama's nutritionally questionable breakfast that sometimes changed color while you ate it. Harry quickly learned to swallow without looking too closely. 2 weeks after Dumbledore's visit, Harry lounged in the family graveyard with Wednesday, practicing the wandless magic that now came more naturally to him. He focused on a small stone, willing it to rise. It wobbled, then shot up 10 feet before dropping back down with a thud. Better, Wednesday acknowledged, which from her was practically gushing praise. You're still thinking too much about the how instead of simply knowing it will happen. Harry wiped sweat from his forehead. It's hard to unlearn everything Hogwarts taught me about needing specific movements and incantations. Wand magic is like training wheels, Wednesday said. Useful for beginners, but ultimately limiting. Then why does everyone use it? Control. Wednesday flicked her finger, and the stone not only floated but transformed into a black butterfly. The Ministry can track wands. They can't track intent. Harry watched the butterfly dissolve into ash. You'd think they'd teach both methods. Power they can't control terrifies them. Wednesday's eyes gleamed. Which is why they'll come for you eventually. For me. Why? Because you're learning our ways now. She leaned back against a tombstone. And Harry Potter with Addams' magic is something they never prepared for. Harry was about to ask what she meant when Pugsley came racing through the tombstones, his striped shirt singed at the edges. Harry. Visitors. Important ones, he panted. Harry's stomach dropped. Dumbledore again. Dumbledore and 3 Ministry officials. Pugsley's eyes were wide with excitement. Mom said to come quick. Dad's already challenging one to a duel. Harry and Wednesday exchanged glances before sprinting back toward the mansion. Through the wrought iron gates, Harry spotted 3 figures in official-looking robes standing stiffly on the porch while Gomez gestured dramatically with his sword. Ah, there he is! Gomez exclaimed as Harry approached. The young man of the hour. Harry recognized Dumbledore's tall figure instantly. Beside him stood a stern-looking witch with a monocle, a balding wizard clutching a bowler hat, and a toad-like woman with a sickeningly sweet smile. Harry, my boy, Dumbledore said, his voice grave but eyes twinkling slightly. I apologize for the unexpected visit. The man with the bowler hat stepped forward. Cornelius Fudge, Minister of Magic, he introduced himself with a pompous air. This is Amelia Bones, Head of Magical Law Enforcement, and Dolores Umbridge, Senior Undersecretary. We're here about your living situation, Umbridge simpered in a high-pitched voice that made Harry's teeth ache. Morticia glided out onto the porch, looking elegant and deadly in a form-fitting black dress. Perhaps this discussion would be better continued inside. The sun is so bright. She pronounced the last word as if describing something obscene. The Ministry officials followed her into the dimly lit parlor with obvious reluctance. The toad woman, Umbridge, actually squeaked when things scuttled across her shoe to deliver a tray of tea. Now, Gomez said once everyone was seated, to what do we owe the pleasure of this international diplomatic visit? Not often we get the British Minister of Magic himself darkening our door. Fudge cleared his throat. Yes, well, it's come to our attention that Harry Potter, a British citizen and quite important to our community, has taken up residence with your family without proper authorization. Proper authorization? Morticia raised an elegant eyebrow. I wasn't aware children required government permission to accept invitations. This is different, Bones interjected, her monocle flashing. Mr. Potter is not just any child. Quite right, Umbridge's smile didn't reach her eyes. Mr. Potter is a ward of the Ministry, effectively. That's news to me, Harry spoke up. I thought I was a ward of the Dursleys, who were perfectly happy to abandon me here, by the way. The situation is complex, Harry, Dumbledore said softly. After further reflection, I fear I was too hasty in agreeing to this arrangement. Harry felt his temper rising. You mean you changed your mind? New information has come to light, Dumbledore explained. Concerning certain practices of the Addams family that may be incompatible with your continued magical education at Hogwarts. He means we're teaching you magic the Ministry can't control, Wednesday translated bluntly, having silently appeared behind Umbridge's chair. The woman jumped with a squeal. Young lady. Umbridge scolded. Children should speak when spoken to. Wednesday stared at her without blinking. I'm not a child. I'm a harbinger. Umbridge's mouth opened and closed like a fish. What specific practices concern you, headmaster? Morticia asked calmly. Bloodletting rituals, Dumbledore replied. Necromancy. Summoning. Curses. All documented by Makusa over the past century. Gomez laughed. Family traditions. Nothing harmful, well, not permanently harmful. Builds character. Mr. Addams, Bones leaned forward, these practices are classified as dark arts in Britain. Teaching them to a minor, particularly this minor, is a serious offense. Dark arts, Grandmama cackled, shuffling into the room with her bubbling potion. Such a limited perspective. Magic is magic. Intent makes it dark or light. That is precisely the kind of moral relativism we cannot expose Harry to, Dumbledore said gravely. Not with his destiny. Harry stood up. My destiny? You mean with Voldemort? The Ministry officials flinched at the name. Yes, Harry, Dumbledore nodded. Lord Voldemort will return. When he does, you must be prepared, with the right kind of magic. And who decides what's right? Harry challenged. The Ministry? The same people who couldn't stop him the first time. Fudge spluttered. Now see here, I've learned more practical defense here in 3 weeks than I learned all year with Professor Quirrell, Harry continued. Who, may I remind you, had Voldemort sticking out of the back of his head. An unfortunate oversight, Dumbledore admitted. The boy has a point, Albus, Bones said thoughtfully. Our system did fail him rather spectacularly. Nevertheless, Umbridge's sickly sweet voice cut in, this simply won't do. Mr. Potter must return to proper wizarding guardianship immediately. On what legal grounds? Morticia inquired, her voice dangerously soft. Umbridge pulled out an official-looking document. The Magical Child Protection Act of 1875 clearly states that magical children must be raised in environments approved by the Ministry. Ah, but that act was superseded by the International Confederation of Wizards Treaty of 1903, Gomez countered, producing an ancient, leather-bound tome from nowhere. Section 7, Paragraph 3, no magical government may interfere with family bonds freely established across international boundaries without evidence of immediate harm. You're quite well versed in magical law, Bones observed, looking impressed despite herself. Harvard Law, Class of '62, Gomez grinned. I specialized in the legal loopholes of supernatural custody battles. Fascinating field. Fudge looked flummoxed. But the boy isn't family. Actually, Morticia produced a scroll tied with black ribbon, he is. By the ancient rite of Familias Adoptio Temporarium, Harry has been made an honorary Addams for the duration of his stay. Harry stared at her. This was the first he'd heard of any adoption ritual. We performed it while you slept, Wednesday whispered, appearing beside him. We needed your drool for the potion. Adoption without consent is not valid, Umbridge insisted. Oh, but we had consent, Morticia smiled. From Harry's blood. Magic recognizes deeper truths than paperwork, Grandmama added. The boy's blood sang when mixed with the family potion. It chose us. Harry felt strangely moved. His blood had chosen them. It made a weird kind of sense, he'd never felt so accepted anywhere except perhaps Hogwarts. Dumbledore looked troubled. Blood magic is unpredictable, Mrs. Addams. And often dangerous. Only to those with something to hide, Morticia replied, her dark eyes fixed on Dumbledore. An uncomfortable silence fell. Look, Harry said finally, I appreciate everyone's concern, but I'm staying. The Addamses treat me better than the Dursleys ever did. They respect my magic instead of punishing me for it. And I'm learning things I need to know. What exactly are they teaching you, Potter? Bones asked directly. Harry considered. Wandless magic. Sensing magical energies. Potions without recipes. How to defend against mental attacks. Occlumency. Dumbledore looked startled. That's advanced magic for one so young. The boy has natural shields, Grandmama said proudly. Needed only a little guidance to strengthen them. Dumbledore and Fudge exchanged concerned glances. Don't you see? Harry pressed. This is helping me. I'm stronger here. It's not just about strength, Harry, Dumbledore said softly. It's about the kind of wizard you become. And what kind is that supposed to be? Harry challenged. Someone who follows ministry rules even when they don't make sense. Someone who only uses magic approved by people who've never faced Voldemort. Fudge winced again at the name. There's no evidence he who must not be named is returning, Potter. Dumbledore's filled your head with, I faced him, Harry interrupted. I saw what was left of him. He's not gone, just waiting. And when he comes back, I'm going to need every kind of magic I can learn. A tense silence followed this declaration. Perhaps, Amelia Bones said carefully, we should consider a compromise. All eyes turned to her. Mr. Potter clearly benefits from this unconventional environment. And the Addams family seems genuinely invested in his well-being. What if he remained here under certain conditions? Amelia. Umbridge gasped. You can't seriously, I'm quite serious, Dolores, Bones cut her off. I've been fighting dark wizards for 30 years. Sometimes conventional methods aren't enough. What conditions did you have in mind? Morticia asked. Regular check-ins by a ministry representative. Certain boundaries on magical instruction. And an unbreakable promise that Mr. Potter will return to Hogwarts in September. We never intended to keep him from school, Gomez assured them. Education is important. I myself have been expelled from some of the finest magical institutions in Europe. Harry bit back a laugh at the ministry official's expressions. I believe Madame Bones' suggestion has merit, Dumbledore said slowly. With the addition of Blood Ward renewal at the Dursleys for 1 week each summer, as we previously discussed. Harry nodded. I can live with that. Wait just a minute. Fudge blustered. I am the Minister of Magic. I haven't approved any of this. Actually, Minister, Bones said, as head of magical law enforcement, I have jurisdiction in cases involving child welfare across international boundaries. It falls under the Supernatural Cooperative Agreement of 1954. Fudge deflated slightly. Well. I suppose if proper oversight is maintained. I'm sure we can come to an arrangement that satisfies everyone, Morticia said smoothly. Now, would anyone care for some refreshments? Grandmama has prepared her special tea. The subsequent negotiations took hours, with Grandmama's questionable beverages loosening tongues considerably. By sunset, an agreement had been reached. Harry would stay with the Addams family for the remainder of the summer under certain conditions. Specific, dark, practices were prohibited, though as Wednesday whispered to Harry, the list was absurdly incomplete. Regular check-ins would be conducted by Madame Bones herself, and Harry would solemnly promise to return to Hogwarts. As the visitors prepared to leave, Dumbledore drew Harry aside. I must impress upon you the seriousness of the path you're choosing, he said quietly. The Addams family has a complicated history with conventional wizarding society. So do I, Harry pointed out. And maybe that's a good thing. Dumbledore studied him for a long moment. You've changed, Harry. I'm still me, Harry insisted. Just more confident. Indeed. And while I cannot say I approve of all the influences at work here, I cannot deny that you seem to be thriving. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled briefly. Just promise me you will be careful. Some magic's exact prices we don't realize until it's too late to withdraw the payment. With those cryptic words, he rejoined the others. As the ministry officials disappeared down the winding drive, Harry felt a complex mix of emotions: relief, triumph, and nagging uncertainty about Dumbledore's warning. "Well," Gomez slapped him on the back, "that was invigorating. Nothing like outmaneuvering government officials before dinner." "They'll be back," Wednesday predicted ominously. "With more restrictions. More demands." "Undoubtedly," Morticia agreed. "But for now, we have what matters: time to prepare Harry properly." "Prepare me for what?" Harry asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. "For everything the wizarding world isn't telling you," Wednesday said. "For the prophecy, the Horcruxes, and the truth about your scar." Harry froze. "What are you talking about? What prophecy? What's a Horcrux?" The Addamses exchanged meaningful glances. "Perhaps," Morticia said delicately, "there are some things Dumbledore should have shared with you already. Things we discovered through our family resources." "What things?" Harry demanded, a chill running down his spine. "Come to the library after dinner," Gomez said, suddenly serious. "It's time you learned why Voldemort came for you that night. And why he'll never stop coming." The Addams family library was unlike anything at Hogwarts. No restricted section, for one thing. Every book, no matter how ancient or disturbing, was freely available. Books on blood curses sat next to volumes on tea etiquette. Tomes bound in materials Harry didn't want to identify lined shelves that stretched to the ceiling. After dinner, the entire family gathered there. Even Lurch and Thing joined them, Thing scampering across the table to turn pages as needed. "What we're about to share," Morticia began, "comes from multiple sources. Some from our family grimoires, some from connections in the British ministry, and some from magical theory that predates modern wizardry. It concerns you, Voldemort, and a prophecy made shortly before your birth," Gomez continued. Harry's heart pounded. "A prophecy about me? About a child born as the 7th month dies, with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord," Grandmama recited, her ancient eyes fixed on Harry's scar. "A child marked by the Dark Lord as his equal. That's why he came after me?" Harry whispered. "Because of some prophecy?" "Part of it," Wednesday said. "The other reason is what he became through his quest for immortality." Gomez pulled down a book bound in what looked disturbingly like human skin. "Horcruxes," he announced, placing it on the table. "The darkest of magics. A method of splitting one's soul to achieve immortality. Even we don't mess with these," Uncle Fester added, unusually solemn. "And I've exploded pretty much everything." Harry listened in growing horror as they explained Voldemort's likely path to immortality: murder, soul fracturing, and objects containing pieces of his essence. Worse, they explained their theory about his scar, that it might contain a fragment of Voldemort himself, accidentally embedded there the night his parents died. "That's why you can speak Parseltongue," Wednesday explained. "It's not your ability. It's his, bleeding through the connection." Harry felt sick. "I have a piece of Voldemort in me. Can you remove it?" "We're researching methods," Morticia assured him. "Extracting a soul fragment without harming the host is delicate work." "Why hasn't Dumbledore told me any of this?" Harry demanded, anger replacing shock. "Protection, perhaps," Morticia suggested. "Or control." "Knowledge is power," Wednesday added. "And those who control knowledge control people. The question is," Gomez leaned forward, "what do you want to do with this information, my boy?" Harry took a deep breath. "I want to prepare. If Voldemort's coming back, if I'm somehow connected to him, I need to be ready." "That's why we intensify your training," Grandmama declared. "No more beginner exercises. We go straight to the advanced material." "But the ministry restrictions," Harry began. Wednesday scoffed. "Apply only to what they know about." And so began the most intense period of magical training Harry had ever experienced. By day, they practiced ministry-approved magic that Madame Bones could observe during her weekly visits, basic wandless levitation, harmless potion brewing, and defensive theory. By night, the real training began. Grandmama taught him potion making that would have given Professor Snape nightmares, brews that required emotion as an ingredient, concoctions that changed based on the phases of the moon, elixirs that temporarily enhanced magical abilities at interesting costs. Blood freely given has power, she instructed, watching as Harry carefully added 3 drops of his own blood to a shimmering potion. Blood taken by force has different power. Always know the difference. From Uncle Fester, Harry learned to channel magical energy through his body, creating shields that could deflect physical objects without a wand. Picture it like electricity, Fester demonstrated, sticking his finger in an outlet and lighting up. It flows through you, not from you. Harry adapted the technique to his own less suicidal standards, eventually managing to deflect small projectiles Pugsley enthusiastically hurled at him. Morticia and Gomez taught him about magical theory beyond what Hogwarts covered, how different cultures approached magic, how intent shaped outcomes, and most importantly, how to recognize magical signatures. Every wizard leaves a trace, Morticia explained one evening, holding up a locket with a serpentine design. Like a magical fingerprint. This has Voldemort's signature, Harry realized immediately, feeling a nauseating pull toward the object. Where did you get this? Family connections, Gomez said vaguely. The important thing is recognizing it. If you can identify his magic, you can defend against it more effectively. But it was Wednesday who pushed him hardest, teaching him to weaponize his emotions rather than suppress them. Your anger isn't your enemy, she instructed during a particularly grueling session. It's fuel. Direct it. Harry focused on his fury at Voldemort, at the Dursleys, at the unfairness of his life, channeling it through his fingertips. The target dummy across the room didn't just fall over, it exploded into flames. Better, Wednesday nodded approvingly. Now try it with happiness. Harry thought of flying on his broomstick, of Ron and Hermione, of belonging with the Addams family. This time, the replacement dummy froze solid, covered in delicate frost patterns. Interesting, Wednesday observed. Your positive emotions freeze, your negative ones burn. We can work with that. Through it all, Harry felt himself changing. Growing stronger, yes, but also more aware, of magic around him, of people's intentions, of his own capabilities. The scared boy from the cupboard was fading, replaced by someone more confident, more powerful, and occasionally, more ruthless. This transformation didn't go unnoticed. During her 3rd inspection visit, Madame Bones commented on it directly. You carry yourself differently, Mr. Potter, she observed as they walked the grounds. More like a duelist than a student. The Addamses believe in practical education, Harry replied carefully. Bones adjusted her monocle. Indeed. And what exactly are they teaching you when I'm not here? Harry met her gaze steadily. How to survive. To his surprise, she nodded. Good. Merlin knows you'll need it, with the rumblings we're hearing. Rumblings? About Voldemort? Bones winced slightly at the name but answered. Nothing concrete. But certain old Death Eater families are getting restless. Meetings behind closed doors. Ancient artifacts changing hands. They know he's coming back, Harry stated rather than asked. Perhaps. Bones studied him. Off the record, Potter, I think Dumbledore's right about the danger. And I think. She hesitated, I think these people might be giving you tools the Ministry can't officially sanction. And you're okay with that? I'm okay with you surviving, she said bluntly. Just remember where your true loyalties lie. With the people who care about me, Harry replied without hesitation. Bones looked thoughtful as she departed, leaving Harry wondering if he'd just gained an ally or complicated matters further. As August drew to a close, the inevitable confrontation Harry had been anticipating finally occurred. Dumbledore returned alone, his face grave as Lurch showed him into the parlor where Harry was practicing chess with Wednesday, who played with actual miniature executioners that beheaded the opposing pieces. Harry, Dumbledore nodded, then glanced at the bloody chess game. Miss Addams. Headmaster, Wednesday replied flatly. Here to kidnap Harry back to school early. Wednesday, Harry admonished, though he'd been wondering the same thing. Actually, Dumbledore settled into a chair, I've come with a final appeal before term begins. Harry tensed. I'm still coming to Hogwarts. We had an agreement. Yes, for this summer. Dumbledore's blue eyes were serious behind his half-moon spectacles. But I must ask you to reconsider your living arrangements going forward. Why? Harry challenged. The Ministry approved it. The blood wards are covered by my week at the Dursleys. What's the real problem? Dumbledore sighed deeply. I fear the path you're walking, Harry. The magics you're learning here, they change a person. They help me protect myself. At what cost? Dumbledore leaned forward. I've seen brilliant young wizards seduced by power before. Promising students who believed they could control dark magic rather than being controlled by it. You mean Voldemort, Harry stated. Among others, Dumbledore said quietly, and something in his tone made Harry wonder who else he might be referring to. I'm not Tom Riddle, Harry insisted. I don't want power for its own sake. Few do, initially. They want protection, or knowledge, or to right perceived wrongs. The desire for domination comes later, almost imperceptibly. Wednesday, who had been silently observing, spoke up. You're afraid he'll become powerful enough to challenge you. To make his own choices. Dumbledore's gaze shifted to her. On the contrary, Miss Addams. I want Harry to make his own choices, but from a place of complete understanding, not partial knowledge. Then tell me everything, Harry demanded. About the prophecy. About why Voldemort targeted my parents. About what's in my scar. Dumbledore went very still. What exactly have the Addamses told you? Enough to know you've been keeping secrets. Important ones. The headmaster closed his eyes briefly. There are some burdens too heavy for young shoulders, Harry. My shoulders have been carrying burdens since I was 1 year old, Harry retorted. At least now I'm being prepared for them. Prepared. Dumbledore repeated. Yes, I suppose you are. But for what future? One where you embrace increasingly dark magic to fight your enemies. Where does that path end, Harry? Before Harry could answer, the rest of the Addams family filed into the room, clearly having been listening from the hallway. Ah, headmaster. Gomez greeted him cheerfully. Questioning our methods again? Expressing concerns, Dumbledore clarified. As Harry's magical guardian, it is my responsibility. Guardian? Morticia raised an eyebrow. How curious. The adoption ritual we performed created a magical guardianship bond as well. One that appears to supersede previous arrangements. Dumbledore looked alarmed. What ritual exactly did you perform? The Ritualis Familiaris Sanguis, Grandmama cackled. Ancient magic. Predates your ministry by centuries. Blood adoption. Dumbledore stood abruptly. That's extremely dangerous magic. It could interact unpredictably with Harry's existing blood protections. On the contrary, Morticia replied calmly. It strengthened them. Harry now carries the protection of 2 bloodlines, his mother's sacrifice and the Addams family magic. This is exactly what concerns me, Dumbledore shook his head. These reckless magical experiments without proper understanding of the consequences. We understand the consequences perfectly, Wednesday countered. Harry is stronger, more protected, and less under your control. My dear girl, this isn't about control, isn't it? Harry interrupted. You placed me with abusive relatives. You kept secrets about my own life from me. You let me face Voldemort without preparation. If that's not control, what is it? The room fell silent as Dumbledore regarded Harry with sad eyes. I have made mistakes, he admitted finally. Perhaps serious ones, in my desire to give you some semblance of a childhood before the burdens of prophecy descended. I never had a childhood, Harry said quietly. The Dursleys saw to that. And now you would skip adolescence as well? Jump straight to the responsibilities and dangerous knowledge of adulthood? I'm not skipping anything, Harry argued. I'm just learning to protect myself while I still can be a kid sometimes. The Addamses don't make me grow up too fast, they make me strong enough to have choices. Gomez put a hand on Harry's shoulder. Well said, my boy. Dumbledore studied the tableau before him, Harry surrounded by his strange adoptive family, all watching the headmaster with expressions ranging from Morticia's serene confidence to Wednesday's open suspicion. I see I cannot dissuade you, he said finally. But I ask one thing, Harry. At Hogwarts, please be cautious about displaying your new abilities. Not everyone will understand. You mean you don't want me scaring the other students, Harry translated. Or their parents, Dumbledore acknowledged. The wizarding world can be remarkably close-minded about alternative magical practices. Don't worry, Wednesday said. We've taught him to blend in when necessary. To be a wolf in sheep's clothing rather than the other way around. Dumbledore didn't look particularly reassured by this metaphor. I promise I'll be careful at school, Harry said more diplomatically. I know the Addamses' magic isn't exactly mainstream. Very well. Dumbledore rose to leave. I shall see you at the welcome feast, then. The Hogwarts Express departs on September 1st, as always. Actually, Harry hesitated, I was wondering, could Ron and Hermione visit before term starts? Just for a day or two. They've been writing all summer, asking questions about where I am. Dumbledore considered this. I'm not sure the Weasley parents would approve of their son visiting the Addams mansion. What if you vouched for his safety? Morticia suggested. We would ensure no harm came to Harry's friends. And Hermione's Muggle-born, Harry added. Her parents don't know about the Addams' reputation in the wizarding world. After further negotiation, Dumbledore reluctantly agreed to approach the Weasleys and Grangers about a brief visit. As he departed, he turned to Harry one last time. Remember, Harry, the choices we make, not our abilities, define who we are. After he disappeared down the drive, Uncle Fester snorted. Easy to say when you have both choices and abilities. He's afraid, Wednesday observed. He's seen what you can do now. What you might become. And what's that? Harry asked. Morticia smiled her enigmatic smile. Free. Ron and Hermione's visit 3 days later was everything Harry had hoped for and feared. Their initial reactions to the Addams mansion were predictably dramatic. Bloody hell, Ron whispered as they approached the imposing structure. It looks like vampire headquarters. Language, Ron, Hermione admonished, though she was clutching her book bag nervously. I'm sure it's perfectly normal inside. It was not, in fact, perfectly normal inside, as evidenced by Ron's yelp when things scuttled across the floor to take their coats and Hermione's wide-eyed freeze when Lurch groaned his greeting. Harry. Hermione flung herself at him once she recovered. We've been so worried. Your letters were so vague. Mate, is that a real electric chair? Ron pointed to Gomez's favorite sitting spot. Welcome to my summer home, Harry grinned, feeling suddenly shy. Would they think he'd gone crazy? Or worse, dark? The introduction to the Addams family went about as well as could be expected. Ron turned pale at Wednesday's casual mention of her guillotine collection, while Hermione's academic interest was piqued by Grandmama's potion ingredients. Is that actual mandrake root? She asked, peering at the gnarled specimen. And moondew in its raw form? We only ever see the processed version at Hogwarts. Girl knows her ingredients, Grandmama approved. You should show her your special brew, Harry. Harry had indeed become quite the potion maker under Grandmama's tutelage, creating concoctions that would have impressed even Snape, before the potion's master inevitably deducted points for showing off. As the day progressed, Harry watched his friends gradually adjust to the Addams' peculiarities. Ron was won over by Pugsley's collection of explosive devices, better than Fred and George's stuff, and Gomez's enthusiastic fencing lessons. Hermione, predictably, fell in love with the library. "These books aren't even in the restricted section at Hogwarts," she breathed, running her fingers over ancient bindings. "Some of these titles, I thought they were just myths." "The Ministry banned most of them centuries ago," Wednesday explained, appearing silently beside her. "They didn't want average wizards having access to real power." Hermione looked torn between academic excitement and moral concern. "But some of these are dark magic texts." "All magic is dark in the right light," Wednesday replied cryptically. Later, when they had a moment alone in Harry's bedroom, his friends confronted him directly. "Harry," Hermione began carefully, "what exactly have you been learning here? Dumbledore seemed concerned when he arranged our visit." Harry hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Wandless magic. Old rituals. Ways to defend myself that they don't teach at Hogwarts." "Dark stuff?" Ron asked bluntly. "Some of it would be considered dark by the Ministry," Harry admitted. "But it's not evil. It's just, different. More primal." "But Harry, there are reasons some magic is restricted," Hermione insisted. "Historical reasons, ethical considerations, political reasons," Harry countered. "The Ministry classifies anything they can't easily control as dark. Did you know wandless magic used to be common before the Ministry standardized wand use? Makes it harder to trace who cast what spell." Hermione looked startled. "I've never read that." "You wouldn't. Not in Ministry-approved textbooks." Ron was studying Harry with an unusually serious expression. "You've changed, mate. For the better, I hope," Harry said quietly. "You seem stronger," Ron acknowledged. "More confident. It's just a bit weird, you know. Living with a family that collects torture devices and talks about poison at dinner." "They're eccentric," Harry smiled. "But they've been better to me than the Dursleys ever were. They don't hide magic or pretend I'm a burden. They're helping me prepare." "Prepare for what?" Hermione asked. "For when Voldemort comes back." His friends exchanged alarmed glances. "Harry," Hermione lowered her voice, "has something happened? Do you know something we don't?" Harry considered telling them everything, about the Horcruxes, the prophecy, his scar. But looking at their worried faces, he held back. They weren't ready. He barely was himself. "Just being practical," he said instead. "After what happened with Quirrell, it's pretty clear he's not gone for good." "Fair point," Ron grimaced. "But, mate, just don't go too far with this stuff, yeah? We need you back at Hogwarts. The real you." "I am the real me," Harry insisted. "Just, more prepared." Before dinner, Harry demonstrated some of his new abilities, simple wandless magic that made objects float, small transformations, and a minor weather charm that created a tiny rain cloud over Ron's head. "Wicked!" Ron exclaimed, shaking water from his hair. "Could have used that against Fred and George all summer." Hermione looked both impressed and troubled. "That's Newt-level magic, Harry. And you did it without a wand." "The wand restricts as much as it channels," Harry explained, repeating Wednesday's teachings. "It's like training wheels. Useful when you're learning, but eventually limiting." "That's not what Professor McGonagall teaches," Hermione frowned. "Maybe she doesn't know," Harry suggested. "Or maybe she does, but it's not in the approved curriculum." "Blimey, you sound like my dad talking about Ministry conspiracies," Ron joked, but his eyes were serious. Dinner was a lively affair, with the entire Addams clan entertaining the visitors with tales of their ancestors' exploits. Ron's appetite even survived Grandmama's mysterious stew, though he wisely avoided the dish Pugsley called octopus surprise. Afterward, Gomez insisted on a tour of the family graveyard by moonlight, the only proper way to see it. With everyone carrying ceremonial candles that dripped blood-red wax. Are those real graves? Hermione whispered as they passed ancient tombstones. Of course, Wednesday replied. Where else would we put the bodies? Ron stumbled over a root. Harry felt a strange mixture of pride and anxiety as he watched his two worlds collide. The Addamses were being on their best behavior, which was still alarming by normal standards, and his friends were trying to be open-minded. But the gap between Hogwarts and the Addams brand of magic yawned wider with every passing hour. Later that night, after Ron and Hermione had retired to guest rooms, Ron's complete with a canopy bed shaped like a coffin, Harry found Morticia in the conservatory, tending to her carnivorous plants. Your friends care for you deeply, she observed without looking up from pruning a Venus flytrap the size of a large dog. They're worried I'm turning dark, Harry admitted. Morticia smiled slightly. Dark is a perspective, Harry. The night seems dark until your eyes adjust, then you see it's full of its own kind of light. They won't understand what I've learned here. What I've become. Perhaps not immediately. She turned to face him. But true friends adapt. They grow together, even when following different paths. And if they can't accept it, then they were not the friends you needed for the road ahead. She touched his cheek gently. But I think you underestimate them. The girl especially has an inquiring mind. And the boy has loyalty that runs deeper than fear. Harry nodded, hoping she was right. The visit concluded the next day with tearful goodbyes, mostly from Hermione, and promises to meet on the Hogwarts Express. As his friends disappeared through the fluke connection Dumbledore had temporarily authorized, Harry felt the weight of his double life settling on his shoulders. At Hogwarts, he would need to be careful. To hide much of what he'd learned. To be the Harry Potter everyone expected while secretly being someone else entirely. You'll find the balance, Wednesday said, reading his thoughts with her uncanny perception. Darkness hidden in light. Light hidden in darkness. Is that what you do? Harry asked curiously. Hide your true self at school. Wednesday's lips curved in her rare almost smile. I never hide. I simply let people see what they expect to see. Their fear fills in the gaps. The final week before term flew by in a flurry of intense magical training. The Addamses seemed determined to cram as much knowledge into Harry as possible before he returned to what they considered the restrictive environment of Hogwarts. On his last night, the family gathered for a special dinner in his honor. The table was laden with exotic dishes, black candles provided the only illumination, and even Lurch had traded his usual somber expression for a slightly less somber one. A toast. Gomez declared, raising a goblet of something smoking. To Harry Potter, no longer just the boy who lived, but now an honorary Addams as well. To Harry, the family echoed, raising their glasses. Harry felt a lump in his throat. Thank you all. For everything. This has been the best summer of my life. You've brought a refreshing energy to our home, Morticia said warmly. Your curiosity, your willingness to embrace our ways. Your high pain threshold, Wednesday added. Your resistance to most poisons, Grandmama nodded approvingly. And your excellent explosion technique. Uncle Fester grinned. Harry laughed. I'll miss you all at Hogwarts. Remember what we taught you, Gomez said, suddenly serious. Trust your instincts. Question authority. And never let anyone tell you what magic you can or cannot practice. We've prepared a few gifts to take with you, Morticia added, gesturing to a black trunk in the corner that Harry hadn't noticed before. Inside, he found an assortment of items that made his eyes widen, books disguised as standard Hogwarts texts but containing Addams family spells, potion ingredients labeled as harmless alternatives, a small silver dagger with runes etched into the blade, and most surprisingly, a communication mirror. For emergencies, Wednesday explained. Or when you want actual intelligent conversation. The mirror is linked to one in the library, Morticia added. We can speak any time, though I suggest discretion at school. And this, Grandmama pressed a small vial of red liquid into his hand. When the darkness in your scar becomes too much, 3 drops under the tongue will suppress its influence temporarily. Harry stared at the vial. You found a way to counter the Horcrux. Not remove it, she cautioned. That requires a ritual we're still perfecting. But this will help if it begins to affect your mind. After dinner, Harry packed his new gifts alongside his Hogwarts supplies, marveling at how his life had changed in just 2 months. He was returning to school with knowledge and abilities he'd never dreamed of possessing, and secrets he couldn't share with almost anyone. Morning arrived too quickly. On the porch, Harry said his goodbyes to each family member, a handshake from Lurch that nearly dislocated his shoulder, an electrifying hug from Uncle Fester, a crushing embrace from Gomez, a dignified but warm kiss on the forehead from Morticia. Remember, Gomez told him, you always have a home here. Family is forever, Morticia added. Even across oceans. Wednesday was the last to say goodbye, fixing him with her intense stare. Don't let them make you ordinary, she warned. You're not one of them anymore. I won't, Harry promised. I'll make you proud. Proud? Wednesday's lip curled slightly. How sentimental. Just don't waste what we taught you. But as Harry climbed into the magical taxi that would take him to King's Cross Station, he caught a glimpse of something in Wednesday's eyes, something that might, in anyone else, have been called affection. As the Addams mansion faded from view, Harry felt both sadness and anticipation. He was returning to Hogwarts, to his first real home, but he was returning as someone new. Someone stronger. Someone with secrets and abilities that would change everything. The wizarding world expected Harry Potter, the boy who lived. They would get him, but they would also get something else, something they weren't prepared for. Harry Potter, honorary Addams. And he was ready to show the world exactly what that meant. Chapter 3, Two Worlds Collide. King's Cross Station buzzed with the usual back-to-school chaos, parents fussing over children, trolleys piled with trunks, and the occasional screech of an owl drawing alarmed looks from oblivious muggles. Harry navigated through the crowd toward platform 9 3/4, pushing his cart with Hedwig's cage balanced precariously on top. He felt different. Not just because of the wandless magic he could now perform or the exotic defensive potions hidden in false-bottomed shampoo bottles. It was deeper than that, a fundamental shift in how he carried himself, how he viewed the world around him. 2 months with the Addams family had changed him in ways that went beyond magic. Harry. Over here. Ron's familiar voice cut through the crowd. He stood with the rest of the Weasley clan near the barrier, their red hair like a beacon. Thought you might have gone dark and ditched us, Ron joked as Harry approached, then immediately looked mortified. I mean, that was stupid, I didn't, relax, Harry laughed. My sense of humor still works. Mrs. Weasley enveloped him in a bone-crushing hug. Harry, dear. We were so worried when Dumbledore said you were staying with alternative guardians. The Addams family treated me brilliantly, Harry assured her. Best summer I've ever had. Yes, well. Mrs. Weasley looked unconvinced. Arthur did some checking at the ministry. They have quite a reputation. Speaking of, Fred, or possibly George, leaned in, is it true they have an actual torture chamber? And a pet hand that crawls around by itself, the other twin added eagerly. Boys. Mrs. Weasley scolded. Don't be ridiculous. Actually, Harry grinned, things been with the family for generations. And the torture chamber's mostly decorative these days. The twins' eyes widened with delight while Mrs. Weasley looked faint. They made their way through the barrier and onto platform 9 3/4, where the Scarlet Hogwarts Express waited amid billowing steam. Harry spotted Hermione already aboard, waving frantically through a window. As they boarded, Harry felt eyes following him, other students nudging each other, whispering. Normal for the boy who lived, but there was something different in their looks this time. Uncertainty. Wariness. News of his summer residence had apparently spread. Ignore them, Hermione said firmly when they settled into a compartment. People always gossip about what they don't understand. I'm used to it, Harry shrugged. Though the Addams would say the fear of others is sometimes useful. That's mildly disturbing, Hermione frowned. Sorry. Still adjusting to regular society. Ron snorted. Regular society. Like you've been living with wolves or something. Wolves would have been more conventional, Harry said with a straight face. The train journey passed pleasantly enough, though Harry found himself growing impatient with discussions about Quidditch and summer homework. His mind kept wandering to the potion recipes Grandmama had taught him, the wandless magic exercises he should be practicing, the protective runes he'd memorized. When Draco Malfoy made his customary appearance to taunt them, Harry found himself responding differently than he would have before the summer. Heard you spent the summer with crazy American dark wizards, Potter, Malfoy sneered from the compartment doorway, flanked as usual by Crabbe and Goyle. Finally embracing your true nature. Before Ron could jump in with an angry retort, Harry smiled, a slow, unsettling smile that Wednesday had taught him. Curious about dark magic, Malfoy? I could tell you stories that would turn your hair white. More white, I mean. He let a tiny spark of wandless magic make the lights in the compartment flicker. Malfoy's smirk faltered. You're bluffing. Harry leaned forward, lowering his voice. Want to find out? Something in Harry's eyes, a confidence that hadn't been there before, made Malfoy take an involuntary step back. Whatever, Potter. You're still nothing special. But the insult lacked conviction, and Malfoy retreated faster than usual. Bloody hell, Ron whispered when they were gone. What was that? Just something Wednesday taught me, Harry explained. People fear what they don't understand. Sometimes it's easier to use that fear than fight it. Hermione was staring at him with a troubled expression. That didn't sound like you, Harry. I've picked up a few new tricks, he admitted. Don't worry, I'm still me. Just, with upgrades. The Hogwarts welcome feast was as magnificent as Harry remembered, the enchanted ceiling showing a clear, starry night, hundreds of candles floating above the tables, golden plates and goblets gleaming. Yet as Dumbledore gave his usual start-of-term speech, Harry found himself analyzing the headmaster differently. The grandfatherly demeanor, the twinkling eyes, the carefully crafted wisdom, all designed to create a specific impression. The Addamses had taught him to look beneath surfaces, to question benevolent facades as much as threatening ones. Power wears many masks, Morticia had told him. The kindly grandfather can be as dangerous as the obvious tyrant, sometimes more so, because you let down your guard. At the head table, Dumbledore's eyes met Harry's briefly. Something passed between them, acknowledgement, challenge, concern, before the headmaster continued his speech. Finally, I must announce that the third-floor corridor is once again open to all students. And may I introduce our new defense against the dark arts teacher, Professor Gilderoy Lockhart. A handsome wizard with wavy blonde hair and a dazzling smile stood to enthusiastic applause, particularly from the female students. That's the bloke who wrote all our textbooks this year, Ron muttered. Mum fancies him. Harry studied Lockhart with narrowed eyes. The man's magical aura, something Harry could now sense thanks to Grandmama's training, seemed oddly muted for someone supposedly accomplished at battling dark creatures. He's hiding something, Harry said quietly. What do you mean? Hermione asked, looking scandalized. Professor Lockhart is a highly respected author and adventurer. His magic doesn't match his reputation, Harry explained, keeping his voice low. There's a disconnection. You can sense his magic. Hermione whispered, intrigued despite herself. How? The Addamses taught me to see magical signatures. Everyone has one, like a fingerprint. His is, smudged somehow. Ron looked impressed, but Hermione seemed torn between academic curiosity and loyalty to authority. Even if that's true, you shouldn't judge before giving him a chance, she insisted. Harry didn't argue, but made a mental note to watch Lockhart closely. Life at Hogwarts quickly settled into familiar patterns, though Harry found himself constantly adjusting, restraining his new abilities in public while practicing in private, balancing his Hogwarts education with his Addams training. Every night before bed, he communicated with the Addams family through the enchanted mirror, updating them on his progress and receiving further instruction. Wednesday was particularly insistent that he maintain his wandless skills. Dependency on a wand is the first step toward magical mediocrity, her solemn face told him through the mirror. Practice until it becomes instinct. And so Harry did, slipping away to abandoned classrooms or secluded spots by the lake to work on the techniques they'd taught him. Sometimes Ron and Hermione joined him, watching with a mixture of awe and unease as he manipulated objects without a wand or brewed potions using methods that would have given Professor Snape an aneurysm. "That's not how the textbook says to do it," Hermione objected as Harry crushed ingredients with his fingers rather than a mortar and pestle, feeling the magic in them responding to his touch. "Textbooks teach standardized magic," Harry replied, channeling Grandmama's lessons. "This way connects you directly to the inherent properties." The potion, a simple healing draught modified with Addams techniques, turned the perfect shade of blue and emitted the scent of midnight jasmine. "It worked," Ron admitted, impressed. "But mate, if Snape caught you doing potions this way." "I know," Harry sighed. "In class, I follow the book. This is just for us." "Us" had become a complicated concept. While Ron and Hermione remained his closest friends, Harry sensed a new distance, moments when they exchanged glances after he said something particularly Addams-ish, times when his casual mention of blood magic or sacrificial rites made them visibly uncomfortable. Others noticed the changes too. Professor McGonagall frowned when Harry transfigured a matchstick into a needle on his first try, without the usual practice attempts. Flitwick squeaked in surprise when Harry's levitation charm lifted not just the assigned feather but every feather on the desk. Even Snape seemed unsettled by Harry's newfound composure during potions, his cutting remarks no longer producing the desired reaction. "Potter," he sneered during one lesson, "perhaps your new American guardians have convinced you that basic brewing instructions are beneath you?" "No, sir," Harry replied calmly. "They actually stressed the importance of foundations. Though they also taught me that intention affects outcome as much as procedure." Snape's eyes narrowed at this hint of alternative magical theory. 5 points from Gryffindor for impertinence. And another 5 for dabbling in questionable magical practices. Harry accepted the punishment without reaction, another change the Addamses had instilled in him. Anger given is power surrendered, Morticia had taught him. Keep your emotions for yourself, not those who seek to provoke them. But for all his efforts to blend in, to be the Harry Potter everyone expected, strange events soon made that impossible. It began with the writing on the wall, "The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware," written in what appeared to be blood, with Mrs. Norris hanging petrified nearby. The school erupted in fear and suspicion, particularly after Harry revealed his Parseltongue abilities during the disastrous dueling club. Suddenly, many students were looking at him with genuine fear, whispering that Harry Potter was the heir of Slytherin, that his summer with the notorious Addams family had completed his transformation into a dark wizard. "This is ridiculous," Hermione fumed in the Gryffindor common room after yet another student had changed seats to avoid sitting near Harry. "Just because you can talk to snakes, it's more than that," Harry said quietly. "It's everything, where I spent the summer, the way I've changed, things they've noticed but can't explain." "Well, it's stupid," Ron declared loyally. "Anyone who actually knows you, knows I'm different now," Harry finished. "Let's be honest. I am different. You've both seen it." His friends exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Different doesn't mean dark, Harry," Hermione said carefully. "Doesn't it? By Ministry standards, half of what the Addamses taught me would be classified as dark magic." "But you're using it for good," Ron insisted. "That's what matters, right?" Harry smiled, grateful for his friend's support even if they didn't fully understand. Right. Now we just need to find the real heir of Slytherin before someone else gets hurt. Their investigation led them through increasingly dangerous territory, brewing Polyjuice Potion, which Harry enhanced with an Addams technique that Hermione reluctantly admitted improved stability, infiltrating the Slytherin common room, and following spiders into the Forbidden Forest. It was during the forest expedition that Harry's Addams training truly proved its worth. When Aragog's children descended upon them, Harry didn't panic. Instead, he summoned the wandless magic Wednesday had taught him, creating a circle of blue fire that kept the spiders at bay while Ron scrambled into the enchanted Ford Anglia. That wasn't Incendio, Ron gasped as they escaped. What kind of spell was that? Not a spell exactly, Harry explained, his heart still racing. It's elemental manipulation, directing magical energy without standardized incantations. That's supposed to be incredibly advanced magic, Ron said. Like, beyond Newt level. Harry shrugged. The Addamses don't categorize magic by difficulty. They just teach what's needed. As the Chamber of Secrets mystery deepened and more students were petrified, Harry found himself relying increasingly on his Addams training. He used sensing magic to search for magical signatures near attack sites. He brewed detection potions in Myrtle's bathroom alongside the Polyjuice. He practiced protective wards around his bed each night. When Hermione was petrified, Harry's careful balance between his two worlds finally shattered. "I'm done hiding," he told Ron as they sat beside Hermione's petrified form in the hospital wing. "I'm using everything I've learned to find this monster and stop it." "What are you going to do?" Ron asked, his face pale but determined. Harry pulled out the communication mirror. "First, I'm calling in reinforcements." The Addamses responded immediately to Harry's call, their faces crowding around the mirror, Gomez looking excited at the prospect of adventure, Morticia serene but concerned, Wednesday intrigued by the mention of an ancient monster. "A basilisk?" Grandmama cackled after Harry described his suspicions. "Haven't seen one of those in decades. Magnificent creatures, though the petrification is unfortunate. Usually, they kill outright. The victims only saw reflections or indirect views," Harry explained. "But we don't know where the chamber is or how to get in." "Plumbing," Wednesday stated matter-of-factly. "Ancient castles renovated in the 18th century often hid original structures within newer water systems. The entrance is likely in a bathroom. Preferably one already haunted," Pugsley added helpfully. "Monsters appreciate the ambience." With the Addams' guidance, Harry and Ron quickly identified Moaning Myrtle's bathroom as the likely entrance. But when they brought this information to the teachers after Ginny's abduction, they were dismissed. "We've searched the entire castle," Professor McGonagall insisted. "If there were an entrance to a legendary chamber, we would have found it." "Not if you weren't looking properly," Harry argued. "Not if it requires Parseltongue to open." "That's quite enough, Potter," Snape sneered. "Always seeking attention, even in crisis." Harry felt a familiar anger rising, but channeled it as Wednesday had taught him, not suppressing it, but focusing it, using it as fuel. "Fine," he said calmly. "If you won't help, I'll handle it myself." "Potter." McGonagall called after him, but Harry was already striding away, Ron hurrying to keep up. "You're really going down there?" Ron asked, his voice cracking slightly. "To face a basilisk?" "I am," Harry confirmed. "You don't have to come." "Mate, my sister's down there." "Of course I'm coming." Ron swallowed hard. "Just, tell me you learned something from those Addamses that works against giant killer snakes." Harry smiled grimly. "A few things. But first, we need help from someone who's faced a basilisk before." To Ron's shock, Harry led them straight to Lockhart's office, not to seek the professor's assistance, but to confront him. "You're a fraud," Harry stated bluntly as they entered. "You never did any of the things in your books." Lockhart, who had been hastily packing, froze. Now, Harry," but you've encountered people who did, Harry continued, stepping closer and focusing on the magical signature he'd been studying for months. You interview them, steal their memories with memory charms, and take credit for their achievements. Lockhart's facade crumbled, replaced by calculating coldness. Very clever. Not that it matters, no one will believe you over me. I don't need them to, Harry replied. I just need the information you stole. Specifically, from the witch who actually faced the Armenian basilisk in 1987. Ron gaped at Harry. How did you, magical signatures leave traces in memory magic, Harry explained, still staring down Lockhart. The Addamses taught me to recognize them. His magic has fragments from dozens of other wizards embedded in it, the real heroes he stole from. Lockhart's hand moved toward his wand, but Harry was faster, not drawing his own wand, but making a subtle gesture that sent Lockhart's wand flying across the room. Wandless magic. Lockhart squeaked. That's impossible for a second year. I had excellent summer tutoring, Harry replied. Now, about that basilisk information. After extracting what little useful knowledge Lockhart possessed, mostly concerning the vulnerability of basilisk eyes, Harry and Ron forced the fraudulent professor to accompany them to Myrtle's bathroom. There, Harry used Parseltongue to open the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets. As they prepared to descend, Harry removed several vials from his robe pockets, Addams' family preparations he'd been saving for emergencies. What are those? Ron asked nervously. Protection. Harry uncorked a vial of murky liquid and downed it with a grimace. This one temporarily enhances reflexes. This one, he held up a black potion, creates temporary immunity to most venoms. And this, he displayed a final vial of clear liquid, is for you. What's it do? Ron asked, taking it cautiously. Grandmama calls it liquid courage. Not actually courage in a bottle, but it suppresses the paralyzing effects of fear. You'll still be afraid, but you'll be able to function through it. Ron hesitated, then downed the potion in one gulp. His eyes widened. Tastes like treacle tart. It adapts to whatever gives you comfort, Harry explained. Ready? Together they forced Lockhart down the pipe, following him into the depths beneath Hogwarts. The journey through the tunnels was tense but uneventful until Lockhart seized Ron's wand and attempted to obliviate them, resulting in a cave-in that separated Harry from the others. Go back and get help. Harry called through the rock barrier. I'll go on and find Ginny. Be careful. Ron shouted back. And use that crazy Addams magic if you need to. Harry continued alone through the tunnels, eventually reaching a massive stone door adorned with serpents. Another command in Parseltongue opened it, revealing the chamber itself, a vast, dimly lit hall lined with towering stone pillars carved with serpents. At the far end lay Ginny Weasley, pale and still, with a handsome teenage boy standing over her. Tom Riddle, Harry recognized him from the diary. You're the heir of Slytherin. And you're Harry Potter, Riddle replied, twirling Ginny's wand between his fingers. How interesting. I've been so looking forward to meeting you. As Riddle explained how he had used the diary to possess Ginny and unleash the basilisk, Harry felt a familiar darkness responding within him, the connection to Voldemort that the Addamses had identified. You're Voldemort, Harry stated, interrupting Riddle's monologue. Riddle's eyes flashed. Perceptive. Most wouldn't make the connection. I can feel it, Harry said. We have a connection, you and I. But you're just a memory, a fragment. A fragment that's growing stronger with every bit of life I drain from the girl, Riddle smiled coldly. Soon I'll be solid enough to resume my great work. Harry recognized the magical process at work, something Morticia had explained during their lessons on dark magic. Soul magic, he said. You're using Ginny's life force to manifest physically. Riddle looked genuinely surprised. You know about soul magic? Curious, you've changed since the stories I've heard from Ginny. Something about Americans. The Addams family, Harry confirmed, watching Riddle carefully. They've taught me a few things about how magic really works. Including how to recognize a Horcrux. Now Riddle's surprise turned to shock. Impossible. That knowledge is all but lost. To British wizards, maybe, Harry shrugged. The Addamses take a more international approach to magical education. Fury replaced shock on Riddle's handsome face. It doesn't matter what you think you know. I've already won. Even now, my basilisk comes. He turned to the statue of Salazar Slytherin and commanded in Parseltongue, "Speak to me, Slytherin, greatest of the Hogwarts Four." The statue's mouth opened, and Harry heard the scraping of scales against stone. Remembering his training, he quickly closed his eyes and reached into his pocket for his final Addams potion, a black, viscous liquid Grandmama had called Eyes of Night. "This lets you see magic rather than physical reality," she had explained. "Useful when facing creatures that kill or petrify with their gaze." Harry downed the potion just as the basilisk emerged. Opening his eyes, he saw the world transformed, not the physical chamber, but a landscape of magical energies. The basilisk appeared as a writhing mass of ancient, powerful magic with a deadly concentration around its eyes and fangs. Riddle was visible too, not as a solid boy, but as a ghostly form connected to both Ginny and the diary by threads of dark energy. "Kill him!" Riddle commanded the basilisk. The snake struck, but Harry, his reflexes enhanced by the first potion, dodged with uncanny speed. He could see the basilisk's movements through its magical signature, anticipating its attacks without looking directly at it. When Fawkes suddenly appeared, dropping the sorting hat at Harry's feet, Harry understood the significance immediately. He grabbed the hat and pulled out the gleaming sword of Gryffindor. The battle that followed was brutal and swift. Harry, using his enhanced reflexes and magical sight, managed to avoid the basilisk strikes while inflicting wounds with the sword. When the serpent finally lunged with its full power, Harry drove the blade up through its mouth and into its brain, but not before one venomous fang sank into his arm. "You're dying, Potter," Riddle laughed as Harry staggered toward Ginny, the broken fang in his hand. "Even your American friend's potions can't save you from basilisk venom." "Maybe not," Harry agreed, the pain spreading from his wound despite the Addams antivenom. "But they did teach me how Horcruxes work. And how to destroy them." Before Riddle could react, Harry plunged the basilisk fang into the diary. Ink spurted like blood, and Riddle screamed, a high, terrible sound as his form twisted and disintegrated. When Ginny awoke moments later, she found Harry kneeling beside her, deathly pale but alive, thanks to Fawkes' healing tears. "Harry," she whispered. "What happened?" "The diary, Tom, it's over," Harry assured her, helping her to her feet. "The basilisk is dead, and Riddle is gone." As they made their way back through the tunnels, Harry explained enough for Ginny to understand without traumatizing her further. When they reached the cave-in, they found Ron had cleared a small opening, through which they crawled to safety. The return to the castle brought chaos, relieved teachers, a tearfully grateful Mrs. Weasley who had arrived with Mr. Weasley, and finally, a summons to Dumbledore's office. The headmaster listened gravely as Harry recounted the events in the chamber, though Harry carefully edited his use of Addams' magic. "So Voldemort preserved his 16-year-old self in a diary," Dumbledore mused, examining the ruined Horcrux. "Ingenious, and deeply disturbing." "It was a Horcrux, wasn't it?" Harry asked directly. Dumbledore's head snapped up, his blue eyes suddenly intense. "Where did you hear that term, Harry?" "The Addamses explained it to me," Harry admitted. "They said it's how Voldemort survived that night, by splitting his soul." A heavy silence filled the office. "They are correct," Dumbledore finally acknowledged. "Though I had hoped to spare you that knowledge until you were older." "With respect, Professor, I've never been allowed to be young," Harry said quietly. "Not with the Dursleys. Not with Voldemort hunting me. I'd rather know the truth and be prepared." "And the Addamses have been preparing you, haven't they?" "Beyond what you've admitted." Harry met his gaze steadily. "Yes. May I ask what else they've taught you? What aided you against the basilisk? Harry described the potions, the wandless magic, the ability to see magical signatures, carefully framing everything in terms of defense and protection rather than the darker applications the Addamses had also covered. Extraordinary, Dumbledore murmured when Harry finished. Though also concerning. Such magic at your age. Saved my life, Harry pointed out. And Ginny's. Indeed it did, Dumbledore acknowledged. I cannot argue with the results, though I maintain reservations about the methods. The conversation shifted to Ginny's innocence, Lockhart's fraud, and the school term, which would continue now that the threat was eliminated. When Harry finally stood to leave, Dumbledore stopped him with one last question. Harry, when you return to the Addams family this summer, as I assume you still intend to, what path do you see yourself taking? Harry considered carefully. I think I'm going to learn everything I can from both worlds. Hogwarts and the Addamses. And then I'll decide for myself what kind of wizard I want to be. A small smile appeared beneath Dumbledore's silver beard. A wise approach. Just remember, Harry, the wizarding world will be watching their savior closely. Let them watch, Harry replied with newfound confidence. Maybe they'll learn something. The remainder of the term passed in a blur of celebration and recovery. The petrified victims were restored with Mandrake restorative draft, exams were cancelled as a school treat, and Harry found himself regarded with a mixture of awe and wariness by his fellow students. His rescue of Ginny and defeat of the basilisk had quashed the air of Slytherin rumors, but new ones had sprung up about his mysterious abilities. How had he survived in the chamber? What kind of magic had he used against the monster? Harry neither confirmed nor denied the wilder stories, taking a page from Wednesday's book, let people see what they expect to see. Their fear, or admiration, fills in the gaps. As the Hogwarts Express carried them back to London for the summer holidays, Hermione finally asked the question she'd been holding back. Harry, what you did in the chamber, it wasn't just luck, was it? Or even just those potions you mentioned? Harry glanced at Ron, who nodded encouragingly. No, Harry admitted. The Addamses taught me more than I've let on. Things the Ministry wouldn't approve of. Dark magic? Hermione whispered. Magic beyond categories, Harry corrected. Some of it would be labeled dark, yes. But it's the intention that matters, not the classification. And you're going back to them this summer? After the week with the Dursleys? Absolutely, Harry smiled. They're family now. Ron cleared his throat. Look, mate, I was thinking, maybe I could visit. Get to know them properly. Mum might have a fit, but Dad's actually quite curious about them. Harry blinked in surprise. You want to visit the Addams mansion? After everything you've heard? Well, they can't be all bad if they took you in, Ron reasoned. And some of that stuff you learned, it's pretty useful, isn't it? Might not hurt to pick up a few tricks myself. I'd want to come too, Hermione added quickly. For academic purposes, of course. Their library alone must be extraordinary. Warmth spread through Harry's chest. I'd like that. I'll ask them to arrange it. As the train pulled into King's Cross, Harry felt a strange sense of anticipation rather than the usual dread of summer. 1 week with the Dursleys to maintain the blood wards, then back to the Addams mansion, back to training, to learning, to his strange but loving adoptive family. The Dursleys were waiting with sour expressions, standing as far from the platform entrance as possible while still being visible. Ready for a fun week? Harry asked them with a cheerfulness that made Vernon's face purpling. Just get in the car, boy, his uncle growled. And keep that freakishness to yourself. Harry smiled innocently. Of course, Uncle Vernon. Though you should know my American family will be checking on me. They're quite protective. The color drained from Vernon's face. The weirdos with the torture devices. They're coming to our house. Only if they need to, Harry assured him. If I'm treated well, they'll have no reason to visit. The drive to Privet Drive was conducted in terrified silence, and Harry knew the coming week would be, if not pleasant, at least tolerable. The Dursleys' fear of the Addamses would ensure that. 7 days later, Harry stood on the front step with his packed trunk, waiting. He'd sent a letter via Hedwig to the Addamses, and they had promised to collect him personally rather than sending a magical taxi. At precisely noon, a long, black vehicle that seemed more hearse than limousine pulled up in front of number 4. The Dursleys peered anxiously through the curtains as Gomez Addams stepped out, resplendent in his pinstriped suit, followed by Morticia in a flowing black dress that made the suburban housewives across the street cross themselves. "Harry, my boy." Gomez bounded up the path, seizing Harry's hand and pumping it vigorously. "Ready for another summer of magical mayhem?" "More than ready," Harry grinned. "Your aunt and uncle treated you well?" Morticia inquired, her dark eyes turning to the window where the Dursleys were visible. "Well enough," Harry assured her. "They were on their best behavior." "Pity," Wednesday remarked from within the car. "I brought my new crossbow just in case." As Lurch loaded Harry's trunk into the vehicle, Gomez insisted on thanking the Dursleys personally, marching up to the door despite their visible reluctance to answer it. "Mr. Dursley." Gomez beamed when Vernon finally cracked the door open. "Just wanted to express our gratitude for housing young Harry for the week. Your contribution to maintaining the blood wards is most appreciated." "Blood, what?" Vernon stammered. "The protective magic surrounding your home," Morticia explained smoothly. "Quite powerful, though nothing compared to what we've established at the mansion. Still, necessary for Harry's continued safety from his enemies." "Enemies?" Petunia squeaked. "Oh yes," Gomez nodded enthusiastically. "Dark wizards, magical assassins, the usual crowd hunting the boy who lived. But don't worry. The protection extends to you as well, as long as you maintain your familial connection." The Dursleys looked utterly terrified, which seemed to delight Gomez immensely. "Well, must be off. Places to go, potions to brew, dark arts to explore. See you next summer." As they drove away, Harry watched Privet Drive recede in the rearview mirror, feeling none of the usual mixture of relief and abandonment. Now he was simply moving from one home to another. "So, Harry," Wednesday turned to him, her dark eyes gleaming, "tell us more about this Chamber of Secrets. Did you bring any basilisk parts? Fangs? Scales? Eyes?" "I managed to collect a few scales and one fang," Harry admitted, patting his pocket. "Thought Grandmama might find them useful for potions." "Excellent." Gomez clapped his hands. "And we have quite the summer planned for you. Advanced wandless transfiguration, ritual magic theory, defensive curses, and more comprehensive occlumency," Morticia added. "Now that we know for certain about the Horcrux connection, you'll need stronger mental shields." "Speaking of," Harry said hesitantly, "I was wondering if Ron and Hermione might visit for a week. They're curious about, well, about everything." The Addamses exchanged glances. "Your Hogwarts friends?" Morticia raised an elegant eyebrow. "They weren't entirely comfortable with our methods, as I recall." "They're coming around," Harry explained. "Especially after the chamber. They saw how useful your training was." "Delightful," Gomez declared. "The more the merrier. We'll prepare the guest rooms, the ones without the deadly nightshade wallpaper, of course. Unless they'd prefer the full Addams experience." Harry laughed. "Let's ease them in slowly." The ride continued with plans for the summer, tales of the Addamses' recent adventures, including Uncle Fester's brief infatuation with a female electrical transformer, and Harry's detailed account of his confrontation with Riddle and the Basilisk. They were about an hour from the mansion when Lurch suddenly slammed on the brakes, sending everyone lurching forward. "What is it, old man?" Gomez asked. Lurch pointed through the windshield. Ahead, a group of black-robed figures stood in the middle of the road, wands raised, masks gleaming white in the afternoon sun. Death Eaters, Harry breathed, recognizing the distinctive attire from books he'd studied. How delightful. Morticia remarked. We so rarely get visitors who arrive with such dramatic flair. Harry Potter, called a magically amplified voice from the central figure. Come out and face your destiny. The Dark Lord may be absent, but his servants remain faithful. Friends of yours? Wednesday asked Harry dryly. Not exactly. Harry reached for his wand, then hesitated. I can't use magic outside school. The trace doesn't apply in our presence, Gomez informed him cheerfully. One of the many benefits of our unique magical classification. The Ministry monitoring system can't distinguish your magic from ours. Harry grinned. In that case. Wait, Morticia placed a hand on his arm. This is Addams' family territory now. Let us handle it. Before Harry could protest, Gomez had bounded out of the car, arms spread wide in greeting. Welcome, masked strangers. What brings you to our humble road? Census takers? Traveling performers? Religious evangelists? The Death Eaters seemed momentarily thrown by this enthusiastic reception. We are servants of the Dark Lord, their leader declared after a confused pause. We have come for Harry Potter. The Dark Lord? Gomez scratched his head. Which one? We know so many. While Gomez distracted them with cheerful inanity, Harry noticed Morticia and Wednesday slipping out the opposite side of the car, moving with silent grace toward the edges of the road. Enough games, the Death Eater snarled. Produce Potter or die where you stand. Die. Gomez looked delighted. What a marvelous suggestion. We Addamses have a long and distinguished relationship with death. In fact, my great-aunt Lucretia has been dead for 30 years and still joins us for bridge on Thursdays. The Death Eaters raised their wands, clearly out of patience. Last chance, Muggle. Where is Potter? Right here, Harry called, stepping out of the car. If the Addamses were putting themselves at risk for him, he wouldn't hide. Harry, no. Gomez protested. We were just getting to the good part. The Death Eaters focused on Harry, wands aimed directly at his heart. The boy who lived, the leader sneered. Not for much longer. The Dark Lord's inner circle has not forgotten you. With your death, we will pave the way for his return. Inner circle? Harry raised an eyebrow. Really? Because Voldemort's actual inner circle is in Azkaban. You look more like the substitute bench to me. The leader's mask couldn't hide his rage. Crucio, he bellowed. Harry prepared to dodge, but the curse never reached him. A wall of writhing shadows materialized between him and the Death Eaters, absorbing the unforgivable completely. Morticia stepped forward, her hand extended gracefully, controlling the shadow barrier. How rude, she remarked. Cursing a child on our property? TSK. What magic is this? One of the Death Eaters demanded. No shield can block an unforgivable. Conventional shields, no, Morticia agreed. But shadows are not conventional magic. They are the absence of light, the negative space between realities. While the Death Eaters focused on Morticia, Wednesday had positioned herself behind their group. With a flick of her wrist, the ground beneath two Death Eaters suddenly gave way, plunging them into a pit that hadn't been there moments before. Amateur hour, Wednesday commented as their screams faded. The remaining Death Eaters began firing curses wildly, killing curses, cutting hexes, blasting curses, creating a chaotic light show that would have terrified ordinary wizards. The Addamses merely looked amused. Gomez drew his sword, deflecting spells with the enchanted blade. Marvelous form, he complimented one Death Eater whose cutting curse he particularly admired. Though your wrist flick needs refinement. Harry, not content to merely watch, drew his own wand and began casting the spells he'd learned at Hogwarts, enhanced by Addams' techniques. His disarming charm didn't just remove a Death Eater's wand, it blasted the man 20 feet backward into a tree. "Well done, Harry," Morticia called approvingly, while using her control of shadows to ensnare another Death Eater who was attempting to apparate away. The battle quickly turned from a Death Eater ambush to a rout. Between Morticia's shadow magic, Gomez's manic swordsmanship, Wednesday's deadly precision, and Harry's enhanced spellwork, the black-robed attackers found themselves thoroughly outmatched. When Uncle Fester arrived minutes later, having followed in a second car with Pugsley and Grandmama, the situation evolved from rout to spectacle. "You started without me?" Fester complained, electricity crackling around his body. With a maniacal laugh, he grabbed the nearest Death Eater's wand hand, sending thousands of volts through the man's body. The Death Eater convulsed, his mask falling away to reveal a face contorted in shock. Grandmama, meanwhile, began tossing potion vials with deadly accuracy, each one producing unique and disturbing effects. One Death Eater sprouted tentacles, another began shrinking until he was barely a foot tall, a third turned an interesting shade of purple and started speaking in rhyming couplets. "I've been saving these for a special occasion," she cackled. Pugsley contributed with his own brand of chaos, deploying homemade explosives that released clouds of disorienting smoke. Within minutes, all the Death Eaters had been neutralized, some unconscious, some bound in shadow restraints, others transformed into states that defied description. "Well," Gomez dusted off his hands, looking thoroughly pleased. "That was invigorating. Nothing like a good skirmish to work up an appetite. What should we do with them?" Harry asked, staring at the captured Death Eaters with a mixture of satisfaction and concern. "The proper authorities should be notified," Morticia decided. "Though perhaps not the British Ministry directly. Their response times are so disappointing." As if summoned by her words, several loud cracks announced the arrival of wizards in official-looking robes, not British Aurors, but representatives of MACUSA, the American magical government. Addams, the lead agent, nodded stiffly to Gomez. "We detected unauthorized British magical signatures in your vicinity. I see you've handled it." "Just a small welcoming committee for our young ward," Gomez explained cheerfully. "Death Eaters, I believe they call themselves. Rather derivative name, don't you think? Death deserves more creative branding." The MACUSA agents surveyed the scene with professional detachment. "We'll take them into custody," the leader decided. "International magical terrorism falls under our jurisdiction. The British Ministry will be notified, of course." "Of course," Morticia agreed. Though perhaps mention that their response to threats against Harry Potter seems inadequate. As the agents collected the subdued Death Eaters, Harry turned to the Addamses with newfound appreciation. "That was incredible," he said. "You weren't even afraid." "Why be afraid of amateurs?" Wednesday shrugged. "They rely on fear to make their magic effective. Without it, they're just people in tacky costumes. Besides," Gomez clapped Harry on the shoulder, "no one threatens an Addams, honorary or otherwise, without consequences." "They knew I was staying with you," Harry realized. "Someone leaked that information." "Undoubtedly," Morticia agreed. "Which means our summer training program will need to include additional security precautions." Harry nodded, his resolve strengthening. "I need to be ready. Not just for Voldemort, but for anyone who might come after me, or the people I care about." "And you will be," Gomez promised. "By the time you return to Hogwarts, you'll be a force to be reckoned with." The incident, while disturbing, cemented Harry's connection to the Addamses. They hadn't hesitated to defend him, using their unique magic without fear or restraint. This was family in a way he'd never experienced before, protective, powerful, and unconditionally accepting. As they finally arrived at the mansion that evening, Harry felt a sense of homecoming. The Gothic towers silhouetted against the setting sun, the gnarled trees creaking in the breeze, the family graveyard with its ancient tombstones, all of it represented security and belonging now. Inside, the familiar sound of Lurch's organ playing greeted them, along with things scuttling across the floor to take Harry's coat. "Welcome home, Harry," Morticia said softly. "It's good to be back," Harry replied, meaning it completely. The summer that followed was even more extraordinary than the last. With the Death Eater attack confirming Voldemort's supporters were still active, the Addamses intensified Harry's training beyond what might be considered reasonable for a 12-year-old, but Harry thrived under the challenge. Grandmama taught him advanced potion techniques, using the basilisk parts he'd brought to create brews of astonishing potency. "The eyes would have been better," she grumbled, "but these scales will do nicely for protection elixirs." Gomez and Morticia focused on defensive magic, particularly the shadow manipulation that had proven so effective against the Death Eaters. "Shadows exist everywhere," Morticia explained as Harry struggled to form a small shadow barrier. "They are absence given form, negative space made tangible. Focus not on creating shadow, but on revealing what already exists between light." Slowly, with dedicated practice, Harry began to grasp this most difficult Addams family magic. By midsummer, he could form basic shadow shields and manipulate existing darkness to limited degrees. Wednesday, meanwhile, continued her role as Harry's most demanding teacher, pushing his wandless abilities to new heights. "Wands are a weakness," she insisted during one grueling session. "A wizard without his wand should not be a wizard without magic." Uncle Fester contributed his unique expertise in what he called energetic magic, essentially, the manipulation of magical energies to create effects similar to electricity. "Think of your magic as current," he instructed, sticking a light bulb in his mouth to demonstrate. It immediately glowed. "It flows through you, not from you." Harry never quite managed to light bulbs with his mouth, nor did he particularly want to, but he did learn to channel magical energy in ways that created similar effects to mild electrical currents, useful for temporarily disabling opponents without permanent harm. When Ron and Hermione arrived for their week-long visit in early August, they found a Harry Potter vastly different from the boy who had left Hogwarts 2 months earlier. "Blimey," Ron whispered as Harry casually lifted a teacup wandlessly while continuing their conversation. "You're doing that without even thinking about it now." "It becomes instinct with practice," Harry explained. "Like learning to walk or ride a broom." Hermione, after her initial shock at the Addams mansion's more macabre decorating choices, threw herself into the experience with academic enthusiasm. The library became her haven, and she formed an unlikely bond with Grandmama over rare potion ingredients. "The application of intent as a catalytic element in potion making is revolutionary," she exclaimed during dinner one evening. "It contradicts Galpalot's third law entirely, yet the results are undeniable." "Laws are for those without imagination, dear," Grandmama cackled. Ron, meanwhile, found an unexpected ally in Pugsley, whose enthusiasm for explosions matched his own brother's. Together they conducted experiments in the family graveyard that occasionally resulted in tombstone relocations. "Mum would have a fit," Ron grinned after a particularly successful detonation, "but this is brilliant." By the end of their stay, both Ron and Hermione had gained new perspectives on magic, and on Harry's transformation. Their initial unease had given way to cautious appreciation, if not full embrace, of the Addamses' methods. "I still think some of this should be more regulated," Hermione told Harry as they packed for their departure. "But I understand now why you connect with them. They don't limit you based on arbitrary rules. And they're not as scary as they seem," Ron added. "Well, Wednesday is. But the rest are just eccentric." "High praise indeed," Harry laughed. As the summer drew to a close, an unexpected visitor arrived at the Addams mansion, Albus Dumbledore, appearing without announcement one evening during dinner. "Headmaster." Gomez greeted him enthusiastically. "Join us. We're having Grandmama's special stew. The secret ingredient is better left unmentioned." "Thank you, but I've eaten," Dumbledore declined politely. "I hope you'll forgive the intrusion, but I felt it necessary to speak with Harry before term begins." The family exchanged glances before Morticia nodded. "Of course. Perhaps in the conservatory?" The night-blooming corpse lilies are particularly fragrant this evening. Surrounded by plants that seemed to watch them with hungry interest, Dumbledore came straight to the point. "I've been informed about the Death Eater attack last month," he said gravely. "A concerning development." "Nothing we couldn't handle," Harry replied. "Indeed." The MACUSA report was illuminating. "The Addams family magic appears quite formidable." "It is," Harry agreed. "And I've learned a lot from it." Dumbledore studied him over his half-moon spectacles. "I can see that. You carry yourself differently, Harry. There's a power about you that wasn't there before." "Is that a problem?" Harry challenged. "Not necessarily," Dumbledore said carefully. "But it may complicate your return to Hogwarts. Students will notice. Teachers will question. The Ministry already has concerns. Because I'm learning magic they can't control." "Because you're learning magic they don't understand," Dumbledore corrected. "Fear often stems from ignorance, Harry." "Then they should educate themselves," Harry said firmly. "The Addamses haven't turned me dark, if that's what you're worried about. They've just shown me there's more to magic than what's in our textbooks." Dumbledore nodded thoughtfully. "I believe you. But others may need more convincing." He leaned forward. "The Death Eater attack confirms what I've long suspected: Voldemort's supporters are growing active again. They sense something coming. His return," Harry stated. "Yes. And when that happens, you will be his primary target." "The prophecy, I know about the prophecy," Harry interrupted. "The Addamses told me." Dumbledore's eyebrows rose. "They know the exact wording?" "That's concerning. Very few people have that information." "They pieced it together from various sources," Harry explained. "They're very thorough when it comes to family protection. And I am family to them now." "So I've observed," Dumbledore said softly. "An unexpected development, but perhaps not an unhappy one." They sat in silence for a moment, surrounded by the gently rustling plants. "What do you want from me, Professor?" Harry finally asked. "Caution, primarily," Dumbledore replied. "At Hogwarts, there will be many eyes watching you, not all friendly. Your new abilities could attract unwanted attention. You want me to hide what I can do?" "I want you to be selective about what you reveal," Dumbledore clarified. "For your own safety, and for the comfort of those around you." Harry considered this. "I won't pretend to be less than I am. But I can be discreet about certain techniques." "That would be appreciated." Dumbledore stood, preparing to leave. "One more thing, Harry. Despite our differences of opinion regarding your magical education, we share a common goal: your survival and eventual triumph over Voldemort." "I know," Harry acknowledged. "To that end, I hope you will consider me an ally, even if not always a guide." Harry nodded. "I never thought of you as an enemy, Professor. Just sometimes, too controlling." Dumbledore's blue eyes twinkled briefly. "A fair assessment. Age brings wisdom, but also sometimes an excess of caution. Your time with the Addams family has clearly brought you strength. I only hope it has also brought you balance." "I think," Harry said carefully, "it's helped me find my own balance. Between light and dark, between power and restraint. Then I can ask for nothing more," Dumbledore concluded. "I shall see you at the welcome feast, Harry." After the headmaster departed, the Addamses gathered in the library for a final family council before Harry's return to school. "He's afraid," Wednesday observed. "Not of you turning dark, but of you becoming independent of his guidance." "Perhaps," Morticia mused. "Though I sense genuine concern beneath his manipulation." "He does care for you, Harry, in his way. The old wizard plays a long game," Gomez added, puffing on his cigar. "Multiple pieces, multiple moves ahead. But he's not used to pieces that move themselves." Harry smiled at the analogy. I'm not rejecting Hogwarts or Dumbledore. I'm just expanding my options. As you should, Grandmama approved. No wizard grows strong drinking from only one well of knowledge. On his final night at the mansion, Harry stood in the family graveyard, looking up at the stars. He felt the now familiar presence of Wednesday beside him, though she had approached without sound. "You'll be different when you go back," she stated. "They won't understand why." "Probably not," Harry agreed. "Some will fear you. Others will try to use you. A few might try to destroy you. I know." Wednesday studied him with her intense dark eyes. "Good. Fear is useful. So is paranoia. Just don't let either control you." "I won't," Harry promised. "I've learned that much from all of you." "You're right," she said. It wasn't a question. "Every week," Harry confirmed. "And use the mirror for anything important." "Most things are trivial," Wednesday noted. "But occasionally, significant events occur." Coming from her, this was practically an admission of attachment. Harry smiled. "I'll miss you too, Wednesday." She didn't reply, but for a brief moment, her hand touched his, the closest thing to affection he'd ever received from her. The next morning, as Harry prepared to depart for King's Cross, the entire Addams clan gathered to see him off. Gifts were exchanged, protective amulets from Morticia, explosive, study aids from Pugsley and Uncle Fester, potions in disguised containers from Grandmama. For the special occasions, she winked. When standard magic just won't do. And this, Gomez pressed a small key into Harry's hand. For the family vault at Gringotts. "You're an Addams now, honorary or not. That comes with certain resources." Harry was speechless. "I can't, family," Gomez said firmly. No arguments. The goodbyes were emotional, at least by Addams standards, which meant Lurch actually groaned with slightly more feeling than usual. Thing gave Harry's finger an extra firm shake, and Grandmama slipped an extra vial of questionable content into his pocket, for emergencies or pranks, whichever comes first. As the taxi pulled away from the mansion, Harry looked back at the gothic silhouette against the morning sky, at the strange family waving from the porch, his family now, as surely as if he'd been born to them. The boy who lived had become something more, something the wizarding world wasn't prepared for. He carried with him not just the Addams family magic, but their philosophy, that power was neither light nor dark but determined by intention, that rules were guidelines rather than absolutes, and most importantly, that being different wasn't something to hide or fear. Hogwarts awaited, with its own magic, its own dangers, its own beloved familiarity. But now Harry had options, 2 worlds, 2 families, 2 sources of strength to draw upon. And when Voldemort eventually returned, as Dumbledore and the Addamses agreed he wouldn't face the same frightened child he'd encountered in the Chamber of Secrets. He would face Harry Potter, Wizard of Hogwarts and Honorary Addams, with all the power and protection that dual heritage provided. Harry smiled at the thought, remembering Wednesday's parting words, "Remember who you are now. Not what they expect. Not what they fear. But what you've chosen to become." And what he had chosen was something entirely new, a bridge between worlds, a wizard who respected tradition but wasn't bound by it, who understood darkness without being consumed by it. Whatever came next, Harry Potter was ready. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.